Willy and DMase coming your way on a Monday on 102.5 The Game. Great to be back with you as we continue the countdown. It is a full college football week. Full slate of games coming up this weekend. Got a chance to watch a little bit this past weekend over in Dublin. A great show to kick off the season.
You were in Dublin?
I wasn't in Dublin.
Oh, okay.
I have been in Dublin, but I wasn't
I
there
know.
on Saturday. That would have been a quick turnaround. It had the
Yeah, it would
Concorde or
be.
something, whatever the fastest plane is. I would have had to have it.
It's into the Concorde. Do they even?
Is the Concorde still a thing? I think it is, right?
Is
Should
it
be.
in-
Is it
is
still
it
the
in
fastest way to
use?
go? Did somebody do something faster than the Concorde?
Yeah.
I don't think so. That's my knowledge.
Yeah, I remember Concorde was a big thing.
Yeah.
I'm sure the tickets on that Concorde board cost a mean penny. We can get you from New York to California in 15 minutes. The ticket is only $30,000.
You got to really want to get over there fast.
And that's not first class either.
But Florida State and Georgia Tech played a really fun game.
Oh,
I
man.
got sucked into that one and really enjoyed it. Going all big upset for Georgia Tech.
It's DJ Ualungale, right? Ualungale.
Uyunglele.
No, it's Ualungale.
Uyunglele.
But just kept calling him DJU.
You got to. He's been around. We know who you're talking
Who is,
about because he's been around forever.
No, it wasn't him. It was Aaron's brother, Rogers. He was doing the game with because the one guy kept calling him his full name.
Yeah, Joe Tessitore was
Yeah,
doing the game.
Joe was saying the full name.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesse
But
Palmer.
he's had a lot of practice. Jesse Palmer.
Was it Jesse Palmer?
It was.
Okay,
It was
Jesse
Jesse
Palmer
Palmer,
just
yeah.
kept saying DJU. I don't blame him. I get it. Because the
get it.
last thing
He
you
went-
want to
he
do
went
is
Terry
mess
Crisp.
up your name. Mess up somebody's name on national television. So,
DJ Uyunglele.
yeah,
Yeah.
Ualungale.
Yeah, it's a lot.
That's
it's
a
a
lot.
lot.
But
It's just a lot of
Tessitore, he
pressure.
had it, boy.
Well, the
He's
guy's
been
been playing
doing it,
college
yeah.
football for how long?
10 years.
5 years, almost 6, I think.
I vividly remember him coming in for Trevor Lawrence for Clemson at Notre Dame in an empty stadium in the middle of the pandemic year, right? That's the first time I ever watched him play.
That sounds about right.
That was a long time ago. He's still in college. These rules, I don't even get me started on this. It's Monday. I don't want to start on a sour note, okay, on the fact that you can be 38 years old and be in your 12th year and still somehow be eligible to play college football.
I don't know
It's
if you
messed up.
saw on Twitter, but there was like a meme of Dabo Sweeney pointing his finger at like some fans of like Florida State and was like, "Told you so," because he was at Clemson, didn't pan out. He's like, "Told you so."
So a big loss for Florida State, who a lot of people have as a very top-level candidate to get into the college football playoff. Now they have a conference loss already under their belt. There's a lot of speculation that the ACC would have a tough time getting an at-large, right?
Mhm.
So the automatic bid and a top 4 seed goes to the champion, and Florida State can still get that. But now their road is a little tougher here. And Clemson fans, I'm sure, for the reasons Nick said, but also just for a simple conference loss to their big rival, they probably were watching very intently over in Dublin. But if you're a college football fan, just a fun game, a nice upset, went all the way down to the very, very last play.
It was a good game. That's one of those games. And here's the great part about it. And this is what we discussed. This is what we discussed when all of this started, happening as far as the 12 team playoff. And once we start to really understand what it was about and sort of the tiebreakers and all this other stuff, you can lose one game, maybe even two. It's when you lose it. You can lose a game early, like Florida State did. Now, I think Florida State may have some problems, though. But you can lose a game early enough in the season, first game of the season, and still end up in the college football playoffs because there are 12 teams. But they didn't help themselves. You lost to a unranked Georgia Tech team, who, by the way, is a pretty good team. That number 44 in the middle, that linebacker, man, he was a freshman, his sophomore, man. That kid was around the ball. He was like, see ball, get ball. That's what he was like. And Georgia Tech played a good game. The quarterback played well. And Florida State was supposed to have the advantage on the defensive line of scrimmage. Like their defensive line was supposed to be that type of line where their offensive line, meaning Georgia Tech, was going to have trouble. Georgia Tech didn't have trouble with them.
No, they did
They were
not.
running the ball, throwing the ball. They were doing everything.
They definitely did. So we'll see how much better they are.
Mhm.
I would say, though, that I think it was a couple years ago, Northwestern won
Mhm.
early. I forget who they beat in Dublin,
Uh-huh.
week 0. It looked good, and then I don't
All
think
of a
they
sudden
won
the
a
wheel-
game for about 8 weeks.
The wheels fall off.
So I do think in August, it's
Yeah.
not a finished product. It's hard enough. Somebody's going to look bad this weekend. I'm
Exactly.
sure that's a pretty good team, or will be a pretty good team. So I would hold out if I'm Florida State and say, okay,
Mhm.
hopefully that's the Mugland. Let's just get back to work. It was August, August 24th. There's a lot of growing that they can do, but a very significant game to kick off the college football season. Also, of course, the Titans played. Let me say this. I enjoyed that the game was on a Sunday. Like,
Me too.
It sort of shortens that gap we have between that game and the first regular season game.
Mhm.
But the Titans, this is a classic interpretation of how do you feel about the team? They obviously looked very sharp, the starters in particular. And we know that those guys wearing the Saints uniforms were not the Saints. That was the JV.
Those were the Aints that was out there playing.
So how do you feel about it? Brian Callahan is going to speak at noon, and we will have coverage of that. We'll listen to what he has to say today. And he was quick to put it all in perspective. He knows. But I saw a team that does look like it's got a good energy about it.
Mhm.
They looked sharp. They should have looked sharp, and they did look sharp, right? I think I would really be concerned if they looked sloppy in that game. But I like what I saw, but I'm having an argument in my head saying this. Don't be fooled. Don't have fool's gold here and be watching this and saying the Titans are going to be awesome or things like that. But at the same time, I'm saying I like the sharpness. I like the energy. I like the cohesiveness.
Yeah, I was texting you guys and through it all, and we had been texting back and forth. I like the operation of what I saw, like him just making reads, just from a quarterback 1-on-1. I like what I saw as far as him making reads, taking the open shot, taking the open pass when it was there, whether it was a check down, or a 5-yard route. He didn't try to push things. He didn't try to force things down the field. Even though it was their second and third unit, he still played within the framework of what was going on. He said as much, weeks prior. Listen, I don't want to get bored doing the boring things. Well, yesterday, a lot of that stuff was boring things. It was just here. Yeah, I'm going to take what you got. I'm not going to try to push it down the field too much. He did, try to get the ball down the field a few times, but he took what the defense sort of gave him. And that's what you want to see in a young quarterback. You don't want to see a young quarterback go out there and think just because it's the second or third team, oh, now I can push it. Now I can take. No, what you're trying to do is set yourself up for the season. So if they are giving you the check downs and the 5, take it. It's boring, but it's efficient. That's what I like, the operation of everything. Now, as far as the play, I really couldn't judge it because they're playing against third stringers. I expected them, to complete pass. I expected them to go 7 for 9 or 9 for 10 that he went. If he would have went 50%, I'd have said we got a big problem here.
Right.
So I enjoyed the operation. The operation gave me a sense of, okay, they may just be headed down the right direction as far as him reading and knowing the offense, doing the boring things. But as far as, how explosive they can be, I don't know, because they were playing against second units. Now, when they played against the first unit on other, in weeks prior, they didn't look that hot. So I'm taking it with a grain of salt, what I saw yesterday. But the operations and what he is looking at, I'm good with that.
I look at it this way. I like the role definition, right? You can envision what it is they want to do. Everybody seems to know what their role is, and this is even without DeAndre Hopkins as an option. But it was almost like dummy offense, other than the fact they didn't cash in the second drive for a touchdown. And at halftime, I heard Brian Callahan said, "You had the check down. You had Tyler Boyd as the check down there. should have done that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the only incompletion, right? But every play, it was almost as if there was no defense,
Yeah.
right? It was like, here's what we want on this play.
Mhm.
Here's how many yards we want to get. Here's who we're trying to get the ball to. It was perfect, right? It was almost like against air. To me, that's a good sign that you can almost do that for a team that, let's put it in perspective.
Mhm.
This is a team that has averaged less than 18
They
points a
hadn't
game.
been
They
able
can't
to
even
drink.
vote.
They
They
can't, be
can't
able
even
to
vote. They're a long way from
They
drinking.
can't go in bars. They can't do nothing. Listen, fans, I know y'all watch the game Sunday. Call in, text in 615-737-1025. Let us know what you think. Are you optimistic? Did you just take it for what it was worth, knowing that they were playing against the second and the third team? Did you get excited because of what you saw Levis doing, the pass that, Ridley caught and got some yards after the catch? Are you excited about Daquan Jackson and what his possibility? The run game looked good. Call us, text us, let us know what you think. Here's another thing.
I would
Willie.
love to hear some feedback on this
Yeah.
because I know this, having done the show as long as we have, you know that if they had not looked sharp,
Oh, yeah. It's been a
people would have
bunch of
been
calls.
panicking today.
Yes.
It would have been crazy. So I understand, like, hey, it was only against the second string. Well, the alternative is to be terrible against the second string.
Yeah,
So
you're right
let's
about
give them
that.
credit for that. So, I mean, I just like how it looks to me like this is an offense that has the vision of a guy that was hired to give them a modern top level offense. And the last couple offensive coordinators, we know since Arthur Smith, have been hugely under fire, right? For the play calling, the lack of cohesion. Now they had issues, right?
Yeah.
With all of and this team is going to struggle some. And that's really where Brian Callahan and his staff is going to be tested is when things start going bad, right?
Yeah.
But I'm confident he's building confidence in me. And I think the team believes in the system.
Yeah.
I think they see their role, right? I don't think anybody's unhappy with their role. I think they like what the vibe is coming out of training camp.
There seem to be, like you said, Willie, defined roles for each individual. I think they're buying into what Coach Callahan and that staff of his is preaching each and every day. And the quicker you can have those guys buy in, the better off you will be. Now, there were two things that I'm concerned about. Well, really one. I think the special teams will work itself out. Hell of a effort at the end to stop the return for a touchdown by the tight end. I mean, he may have won himself a roster spot, whether it be on whether it be on a 53-man roster or on practice squad, because if he didn't hustle back, that was a touchdown right before half.
Wow, that was a great play.
Yeah, but, and I mentioned this yesterday to you guys over text, I'm disappointed that they couldn't get that 31. I am really disappointed they couldn't get it because, again, this is your starting offensive line. These are the guys you're going to be going to battle with for 17, 18 games, hopefully more than that once the playoff come. It's 3rd and 1. And I think they end up trying to run the play twice on 2nd and 1 and 3rd and 1, but I could be mistaken on that one. But you couldn't get 1 yard against this 2nd and 3rd team unit. That's what I'm disappointed in, because when you line up, I remember we used to line up on the 3rd and 1 or at the goal line, and Fish would say they know what's coming. They got to stop it. Everybody in the building knows what's coming. You just got to stop it. A hat on the hat, man on man, my strength versus yours. I feel I'm going to win. If we are about that life, if we are that type of offensive line, we got to win battles like that, especially against backups. And y'all couldn't get 1 yard. I'm disappointed in that. I'm not going to make it a huge thing, but I am disappointed because, to me, you should have gotten it. If he would have decided to run it again, you should have got it, but he chose to pass.
Right. And they did
And
get
they got it.
And they got it easy. It was a nice little play
yeah.
call. I would say, their success rate, if you just said to yourself, eye test, or if you want to use the metrics that some of these analytics sites use, was this play a success? They batted about 85%.
Yeah.
Right. There was only a couple plays that didn't work. They had the bad reverse to
Yeah, that
Jackson
was
where I'm not
horrible.
sure what he was doing on that play.
No,
he
they
ran way back.
Yeah, because of how they gave it to him. It should have just been a regular jet sweep. I don't understand this
I was
whole
thinking the same
reverse and
thing.
go
I thought he
around,
was going to
give
throw it.
up
He went so
ground.
far back. He didn't really get up the field. And the next thing you know, there's 3 unblocked guys.
That's why
Well,
people
the way
don't do reverse.
The way they pitched it to him, it was like it looked like he was going to throw it to Will Levis into a
Yeah.
roundabout way. That's what I thought too.
Yeah,
Willie.
something.
But like to Willie's point, to DMase's point, if that little jet sweep reverse was a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage, it would have worked out.
Exactly. Why are you doing a reverse? Nobody does reverses no more.
Well, I do think it's a sign of how they want to use Jackson.
Exactly,
And I
yes.
did think Jackson had another game, and you're not going to see it if you just look at the stats. But when you watch him,
Yes, he pops.
He pops.
Yes.
No doubt about it. He has got a unique skill set, and I am very optimistic about what he's going to give them. But all things considered, they looked sharp. And I'm saying to myself, look, this was a horrendous offensive line last year. I don't know that you could have put them out last year in certain Sundays, right? Let's just take a random Sunday in November, who they were playing on the offensive line up against a team's second string. I don't think they would have dominated them like that. Like,
No.
I do think they're making it's a sign of progress to me. They played the offensive line, the starters, for the entire first half. So even when Rudolph came into the game,
They still were in the game.
I watched 5 guys that looked like they were on the same page. And hopefully, like we've been saying from the start, there's a lot of new guys there. So it should get better as the season goes along, if they can keep those guys on the field. And I did think that, Radens and Petit Frere, for all the rustiness, all the time they've missed from injuries, their lack of reps together, they still were clearly more talented than the guys they were playing against, for what that's worth.
Yeah.
These are guys trying to make an NFL roster, and they dominated those guys. It will be completely different when they play on week 1, right? We know that it will be completely different. But it's just a checkbox in the progress report, right? That's all you can do right now is to do that.
Are you, regardless of who's in front of you, are you working the technique the way it should be run? It could be, they could have, Aaron Donald out there. It doesn't matter. They can have you out there, Willie. Are they working the technique and doing the things that they've been asked to do from an offensive line standpoint? That's what I want to, know, and I'm sure whenever Brian Callahan talks, hopefully we get a chance to hear Bill Callahan later on this week and see what he saw. How was he impressed by what he saw? Did he see some progression and some development by what he saw, knowing that was the second team or the third team defense? But it's all about, are you doing the things necessary for us to win? Are you working your technique the right way? Are you, no matter who's in front of you, are you still really conscious of what you're doing? Or are you just thinking, oh, this guy's a third stringer, I can do whatever I want to do and still be able to, block him? Those are the things that I would love to hear from Brian or Bill Callahan as far as when they're discussing the offensive line, because there's a big difference from playing against the New Orleans Saints second and third string and the Chicago Bears first string defensive line.
Okay. We've got a few texters on our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. If you're an unnamed texter today, we're going to go with scrub backup QBs from the past. Nick, who you got?
I love that.
Here's the first text. It has to do with the Concord. So who's our
Paxton
texter?
Lynch.
Paxton Lynch texts in. It's not actually Paxton Lynch, but he said there's not been any Concord flights for a long time. If I remember correctly, 2003 is the last. Can we fact check that, Nick? So apparently the Concord, we're way behind the times. The Concord hasn't been there for 20 years. So if you need a ride across the pond to Dublin, you can't get the Concord.
You ain't taking a Concord.
It's been a long time.
Talk to Doc Brown. That's who you got to get.
Okay, Doc Brown.
Another texter. Okay, DMase, we need another backup QB from the past.
Man. Gosh, a backup quarterback. First name came to be Tim Tebow. There we go.
Tim Tebow texts in and says, Willie, please discuss if we got hosed on the trade with the Sharks. That's coming up later in the show.
Yeah, we get to that later.
We have some thoughts.
Yes.
We have a lot, and and Barry Trotz did an outstanding interview with Jared. Jared hit him with tough questions. And right after, I mean, I'm talking, this was like 30, 45 minutes after the trade had just been done.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And Barry was on our station with Jared, and he as he always does. Open book Barry. He was frank to the point. He didn't pull any punches.
OBB.
Yeah, and he said it. Look, the fact that Askarov pitched a fit and was a crybaby about I'm not going to the AHL. I'm ready for the NHL. That was a factor in how fast they decided to move forward.
They didn't want that
the
energy
trade.
in their building.
No, they didn't. They didn't want any part of that, and it was obvious there. So we're probably not going to know for 5 years whether whether they got hosed on the trade or not. Right? The guy that they got for Askarov, one of them, the person they already have, Edstrom, is 19. So in 4 years, he's going to be 2 years younger than Will Levis is right now. So we got a long way to go in the life of David Edstrom. Then the other kid is a first-round pick that they haven't picked yet. He's only 17, wherever he is in the world. He could be in Russia. He could be in Finland. He could be in Saskatchewan. I don't know, but he's 17.
Yeah.
So we don't know who that's going to be. So it's going to be a while before they know what they've got for this. And the other goalie could end up being the Milwaukee goalie this year, Krona, who won a national championship at the University of Denver. He was kind of that third piece. So we'll talk about all this at 1 o'clock. We're going to get very detailed on it. We'll give you some feedback from around the league of what people think of that trade. And then we've got one more texter before we go to the break. Skyler says, really enjoyed the play calling and the flow of the Titans offense. The play actions mixed in with the runs were nice. Tight end screen was a nice play call. Pollard looks good. The screen game, they obviously went into that. Okay, when we come back, let's talk about the screen game because they threw 5 or 6 screens. Every one of them was hit big. I was like, man, this is a team that I've watched for 10 years without ever having a good screen. I swear, maybe 20 years. You could count on one hand the good screen passes. The last couple of years, they started figuring out how to get Derrick Henry in position for screen. This has not been a good screen franchise. Look really sharp on Sunday. We'll talk about when we come back. We're talking a lot of Titans in this first hour. Hit the phones. If you're an unnamed texture, we'll give you a backup scrub QB name. 615-737-1025. What do you think? 3-0 in the preseason? Optimistic? Sneak attack? Around the league, nobody is talking about this team.
Super Bowl, baby.
No. Super Bowl, baby. You're not going to hear that outside of Nashville, that's for sure. Stay tuned. We're coming back with more of Willy and DMase. We're back here on Willy and DMase. Remember, you can join us on our text line at 615-737-1025. Jump on in, and we'll get your thoughts on the Titans. Look, it's a good feeling right now. If you Brian Callahan said it after the game. He goes, hey, look, I know that there is absolutely no correlation, 0.0% correlation of a team's record in the preseason and their team's record in the regular season. That having been said, he just feels good about his first camp. This is a rookie head coach with two rookie coordinators, a young quarterback, huge turnover in the roster. But I think all of that being said, they look like a team. So what is that worth to you, DMase? And I'm throwing this out there not knowing the answer, and I would love to hear from some listeners here, because the over-under on this team continues to be about 6.5 games. They are consensus the last place pick in the AFC South. And we knew that was going to be the case in the summer. It still is after training camp. That is not going to change. I was listening to the Ringer podcast this morning. They were doing their AFC predictions. They get to the AFC South, and I put my hand up to my ear. DMase like this, I'm like, ooh, here comes the AFC South. What are they going to say about the Titans? They mentioned the Titans for about one sentence, and then they talked about the Jags and the Texans for really the rest of the time out of the 4 divisions in the AFC. So that is going to be the wrap. They are going to be the unknown team that everybody expects to not be good. So what does it mean where they are right now? 615-737-1025. Now, we talked about this. They had the texter right before the break ask about the screenplays, DMase. What did you like about how they used the screen game? Because it looked sharp.
Yeah, it did. I think Will Levis, when you talk about how to go about the operations of a particular play, I think on those screenplays, Will Levis or Mason Rudolph did a wonderful job. I'm not sure if Willis threw a screenplay or not. He looked good too toward the end. But the operations of the screenplay was what you like to see. The deception and the actual run, the offensive line selling it, and then the offensive line getting off blocks, getting down the field.
The design looked good. The execution looked good.
The runner was patient. Again, take it with a grain of salt because it's against second and thirds, but it's just, as I said, it's all about the operations. That's what I am big on in regards to yesterday's game. Regardless who's out there on the field, the operation still needs to run the way you want it to run. It doesn't need to look like there's a bunch of hiccups and guys don't know what they're doing. I thought they may have went to the screen game a little bit too much.
Yeah.
It's almost like you're showing your hand. And is he going to be one of these coaches that if something works once or twice, he's going to keep on going to the well with that play? That's what I'm worried about too. Or is he going to design it in a different way? I would tend to think he will continue to. I think the screen game is going to be a big part of what they do because they have guys that can take screen plays and take them to the distance, whether it's Pollard, Tajay Spears.
I love Spears in the open field on Jaquan Jackson.
Jaquan Jackson. Guys like that. And I even believe Calvin Ridley possibly can do it or Traylon Burks. So they have the guys to sort of run this screen play package. I saw it a little bit too much. I would have rather him sort of pull back maybe a couple of them. But again, the operation of the actual screenplay, it was great.
I try to say to myself, is that something that will work with the personnel that they're using? I think it is a really big sign, a big theme of this is how you were not going to use Derrick Henry in that type of role. But the versatility of the two backs and the different type of offense, it is a major contrast to what they did last year. And I'm curious how they do that. What was the other thing that gets what gets talked about every time somebody from afar or even here brings up about Will Levis? Well, he only completed 58% of his passes. Well, this is how you get the completion percentage up, is you throw a lot of high percentage passes that you should complete 85, 90% of screens. And this has really never been a screen team other than the occasional screen that they did effectively the last year or two with Derrick Henry. But I think high percentage passes to the running backs hopefully will be something that does exactly what it's designed to do. Get those guys in the open field, get the completion percentage up, but also set up some things down the field. Like, you can see that the arm talent of Levis has always been his calling card, right? You can hum it. He can make throws that other quarterbacks cannot make.
Yeah, he can make every throw in the book, basically. From sideline to sideline, down the field, middle of the field, short pass. It doesn't matter. I was kind of like, ooh, don't make that throw. The one he threw to Calvin Ridley in the end zone. If you really watch it, if that's in a game, that's an interception. It's either you throw it out the back of the end, either you throw it high and out toward the back where nobody can get, or basically either the receiver has a slight opportunity to get it or nobody gets it. That pass scared me because I think in a game with guys that understand, he tries to make that corner is going to come off and that corner is going to intercept the pass. That's what it's going to be. I didn't like it. I know why he did it, but I didn't necessarily like it because you even said, you can hear Brian Callahan said the check downs there. Take
what's there.
Boyd's there. Take it and sort of live on to play another day. That's what we need to worry about with Will Levis. Can he continue to do the boring things without getting that itch to throw it downfield? I don't know. It looked good, but they weren't playing against the top notch or the ones out there. But again, I'm all about the operations for yesterday. The operations look good. Will Levis look good. The offensive line looked good. I would say this about the Titans in their offense. I think they have players that can play within this offense that fits this offense perfectly. I think they want to be a 3-tier passing team, meaning they want to be able to go short, intermediate, and deep. Some teams, they don't have the speed to get deep, or they don't have the big bodies to show or the quickness to throw this underneath game that they really want to throw, passing game. The Titans have a bit of both. The Titans have the quickness, and they also have the people that can get deep, or person that can get deep. They want to be a 3-tier team, and they can be, but it's up to Will Levis to continue to do the things that he said he was going to do. Do the boring things no matter what. If they're giving it to you, take it, because that moves the ball down the field. Now, I know there's going to be opportunities where he has to push it down the field, but don't force anything. This team, with the talent that they have, they brought in the talent that fits this offense that they want to run. Just look at everybody, because like I
feel good about that, and that's saying roles. Something, because they brought a lot of people
exactly,
in.
And everybody has a defined role on that team.
I think that's a big thing to lean on, is role definition, and I don't think I have felt that way about the last.
I didn't feel that way the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Like, other than Derrick Henry, I didn't know what anybody else, like, what is truly their role on this team.
Even the year they were the 1 seed, when they had Julio Jones, I didn't feel as good. The last year I really felt good about the role definitions when they had
AJ,
Jonnu Smith, Corey Davis.
Yes.
That was perfect role definition. That every piece fit. And
you
I
know
saw
who the number 1 none, you know who the number 2, you know who the bell cow on the back, and everybody else had a job to do, and they knew exactly what they were supposed to do.
More text from the text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Wes in Clarksville says, please tell me the guy with the 3 first names who's the tight end is going to make the team, or is it the 3 last names? He's talking about David Martin Robinson. There's always a guy that doesn't look like he should make the team. He's an unknown starting the camp, and he has a great performance or two because he's been active in all 3 games. The broadcast, you can't help but notice him. He's out there, and it seems like every tight end is shown up pretty well. I do the math. I guess he would be the 4th tight end, David Martin Robinson, the kid out of Temple.
Yeah, he would be.
Can they figure out a way to keep him in there?
it's.
Can they sneak him on the practice squad, or do you think somebody would take him?
I'm not sure they're going to be able to sneak him on the practice squad. I'm not sure.
So he's that good that somebody is going to say,
yeah, I
think
like he's popped enough where teams will, if you put him on your practice squad, teams will bring him up as a third tight end and have him on that roster. In any other year, he would be the Titans' third tight end. But this is a position coming in that Brian Callahan was excited about. He even said it. You had two young guys, regardless of what you think of them, they both have made plays in this league. I'm talking about Chig and Wiley. They've made plays at some point in their very, very short NFL career. And Brian Callahan came in and he said he felt he was excited about the potential that this room have. And that was just with the two, Wiley and Chig. Then you add the other two to the mix that have been playing really well during preseason. This may be, at least in preseason, one of the better position battles we've seen this year. The tight end battle, the receiver battle, it is what it is. We kind of figure we know who's going to be the 6 or 7 guys there. The running back, it'll work itself out. I think the third and fourth guy is going to battle Haskins and Chestnut. But the tight end position, it's been a battle, and it seems like it's like iron sharpen iron. They've gotten better because they know that you can't take a game off. You can't take a playoff because you could be at the front of the line. By you taking a playoff or practice off, that can push you to the bottom of in the back of the line. So to me, this has been probably one of the most, if not the most competitive position battle to this date, the tight end position. Because if you told me David Martin Robinson was going to be your second tight end, I'm like, okay, he earned it. By the way he played in preseason, he's earned it.
In the practices as well.
Exactly.
It's one thing, like some people say, well, if you just go by the games, like some of the national people, all they have to go by is who does well in the games. But it should be a package of what's happening each day in practice as well. Jordan in Nashville. So he has a name, so I guess we don't need. There was a guy named Jimmy Jordan, I think, way back that played for Florida State. I think he was maybe a scrub backup, at least in the USFL. Maybe that's how far back we're going. He says, hey, there's rumors that the Concorde jet is coming back and operating under different airlines. Okay. He says, hey, look, I like the vision of the Titans. I like the scheme. I like the personnel choices. That being said, I don't think this team will be that good this year. Everything looks clunky and will take too many weeks to mesh to make them competitive. If this was year 2 or 3 together, I'd be more optimistic. Now, this is the double-edged sword with all the veterans that they added, all the money they spent to patch holes is, let's say they're better than people expect, and there's something like 8 and 9 or 9 and 8.
Mm-hmm.
That would be a nice step ahead from last year. But with all the veterans, does that get you where you want to go in 2 or 3 years? Because 8 and 9 isn't what it's all about, right? Improvement from last year to this year is only part of the equation. The real goal is to get back into contention.
Mm-hmm.
And with veterans that you signed, I guess we would have to assess that at the end of the season. But if it all means that Levis is taking a big step forward, then probably all is forgiven. Fair?
Yeah, as long as because listen, you want your team to progress. You want your team to develop. But more importantly, you want your quarterback to be able to develop within the system that you're coaching him in. And again, based upon the operations that I saw yesterday, based upon how I've seen it, the whole preseason game, Will Levis is developing. Now he's still a work in progress. He's not a finished product, but I do like that. However they have designed the operations to go, he's stuck with it. He hasn't tried to necessarily, go outside the scope of what they're trying to do. He hasn't tried to play hero ball per se. Now get it. I know it's only preseason and you don't have to play much hero ball in the preseason, but these are habits that you can break. And the best way to break them is during preseason or during practice. So when you get in games, you can stick to the script, so to speak, the script that you've made for yourself. We don't go broke taking a profit. If they take away the deep or the intermediate, hey, listen, there's always an outlet. There's always a guy open in a offense. Just about. You just got to find that guy. You got to stay patient enough to find that guy. And I think that's what Will Levis is starting to learn.
Texter texts in, and we'll give him a name. Let's give him
Bubby Brister.
Bubby Brister. That's
Yeah.
a good one. That's a good one. Bubby Brister says, when is Silly Underdogs Day and time, please? Hey,
Ooh,
when
it's
is it
coming up
always,
pretty.
baby? There are certain things that do not change. That would be Thursdays at noon.
Exactly. It's coming up.
It's coming up. The debut. It's coming up.
Patience.
Exactly.
Patience.
Hey, the people calling for it,
The
man. The
suit
people
coming
want
out,
it.
the voice of God coming out of the sky here. The suit comes. He just seems to know what the question was before we even read it. Let's see. We've got another texter here. I know I'm named. This is Wes, but can I be Rusty Smith? Sure, man. Rusty Smith.
Yes, you can have it. Rusty Smith. There
Yeah,
you go.
I'm encouraged about the Titans O-line. The last couple of years, I don't think the O-line could have blocked teams' second and third string defenders. I had that thought during the game yesterday.
I mean, that's a damn low
That's a
bar.
low bar.
Yeah, it's a very low
But
bar.
let's be honest, man.
But it's honest. But he's
the bar
honest.
is low.
Yes,
The
the
bar
bar
is
is
low.
very low. Damn it, it's on the ground basically. Matter of fact, we had to dig out a trench to put it even further down. That's
on
our bar.
On the
lower
high
bar.
jump, the bar wouldn't even get you to the pad that you
No,
land on, right? You have to raise the bar just to get to the level of the pad. You know that big soft pad they land on? All right, when we come back, we're going to
That's
get some
low.
more. That's low.
That's low.
That's low. We're going to hear from Brian Callahan, his weekly press conference at noon. Remember, tomorrow the cuts will be made by 3 o'clock. Probably between now and then, you're going to start to hear some things filter out, right? Some people that around the league. And Rand Carthon did say this. Keep this in mind. He made it a point, and he has a couple of times in the preseason. We have a very high pick on the waiver wire.
Yes.
And we intend to use that to our advantage. He wasn't asked about that yesterday on the broadcast, but he said it. So that tells me he's got his eye on some people around the league. They might have a new addition or two. I'm curious what position that would be. Teron Davenport will join us at 1. We'll get his thoughts on that. We'll hear from the coach at noon, and we will definitely talk about the Askarov trade with the Predators. Stay tuned. We're rolling here on Willy and DMase, 102.5 The Game. $11:48. Don't forget, at noon, press conference. Final press conference before the cuts for Brian Callahan. You're going to want to hear that. We'll have it for you. So let's roll through some of these texts we have. And our theme is backup quarterbacks from the past. A great one so far we have is Bubby Brister. You can, by the way, name yourself if you want.
Yeah,
like if you want to text in and say, I got dibs on Bubby Brister or whoever it is, Mark Malone. I can go way back in like the 80s and 70s, Steve DeBerg, guys like that. Justin in Greenbrier says, I know this was the Titans varsity versus the JV, but the play calling, the way they marched down the field, even the offensive line looked cohesive. I did have that word pop in my head, cohesive. Mm-hmm. I'm encouraged by what I saw, really trying not to get my hopes up, but they look fresh out there, and I hope they're a sleeper team. I do think the question is fair of can they be the sleeper?
They can.
There's nobody out there that is going to predict them. I'm going to scour the next couple of weeks. Everybody that does a preview, I do this for the hockey too. And I want to try to find, if somebody can find one, bring it back to the nest. Okay. Let us know. Text us 615-737-1025, attach it, or just tell us who predicts the Titans to go to the playoffs, win the division or go to the playoffs. Find somebody outside of Nashville.
And Willie.
That has it. I don't think we're going to find one. Will there be one?
You can search until you can't search. You can look up to every rock, inside every cave, go as deep as you want in the ocean or as high in the sky as you choose to go, and you will not find a person,
not one,
outside of Nashville, Titan fans that say, oh yeah, I'm picking the Titans to go to the Super Bowl. No, you're not going to find that person. No,
forget the Super Bowl. I'm talking about sneak into the playoffs, either as a champion of the AFC South if the division flattens out, which is a possibility.
Yeah.
Or you just sneak in there at 10-7 or maybe 9-8. All the math and the tiebreakers work for you. I'm not sure we're going to find that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, you may have to go.
Every podcast, every prediction I've seen has the Titans around the same thing, 6-11, 7-10.
There might be someone that decided to take a 20-year sabbatical somewhere in the mountains and don't know. And the last time they saw the Titans, they went to the AFC Championship game. So they probably think, yes, this team's going to make it to the playoffs. That's the only person that's going to believe that. Outside of Nashville.
Okay, we have another texter here. And
let's call them.
He wants to be called Logan Woodside, who actually was the backup. And he has a quarterback-related question. Do you think Mason Rudolph or Malik Willis have any trade value? I think Mason Rudolph would have trade value. Of course he would,
but why would you trade him?
I don't think they're going to do that. The question is what to do with Willis. And I do think this is going to be a theme of the press conference because, look, Willis, he did a nice job at the end of the game yesterday. The two throws were good throws.
He looked good.
And he can run. And if you want to be the third quarterback and you want to have a chance to come in and win a game in a emergency situation, the fact that he can run and knows the offense would help him. But the question is, do you keep him on the 53 or do you risk somebody snapping him up? Now, Charles Davis, he was pretty adamant that he thinks somebody would take him. I'm not as sure. I'm not sure that would. You kind of believe with Charles.
Somebody would. I mean,
I don't think so. I'm willing to roll the dice on that.
Based upon what he's done this camp. And if you've watched him the last couple of years, I think people would look at it, okay, there's something there. The kid, he looks much different than he did first and second year to now. He has coaching. He has somebody that is really getting in his ear and making sure he's doing the fundamental things right, and he's developing as a quarterback. And if you cut him, I think other GMs would be looking like we can bring him in as our third quarterback and just continue to develop him. And he might not be nothing but more than a backup. We're not looking for him to be the starter. We're looking for him to be a backup. How long is Mason Rudolph's contract? Is it a 1-year deal?
One, maybe two.
One, I believe. Yeah.
Was it just 1 year? Okay.
But okay,
I'll double check for
if,
you.
if let's just say it's a 1-year deal. Let's say, Mason Rudolph gets in again, like he did in Pittsburgh for 4 or 5 games. 1 year.
It is
1 year,
year.
2.8.
Yeah, gets in 4 or 5 games. Say he wins 3 out of the 4 or 4 out of the 5. His value will be much larger in the open market the next following season. So to me, the NFL created this space, that third receiver, meaning a quarterback spot, for a reason. They're asking you. They're not. It's almost like they're saying, you don't have to keep them, but here's that third spot. You can keep them. So the NFL is almost like they're pushing you to keep that third quarterback, because the last thing they want, and again, I know it rarely happens, the last thing they want is to see what happened. The same thing happened again that happened in San Francisco. Nobody wants to watch that. People are turned off. And from a betting standpoint, it's horrible, So the NFL has found a way to say, you know what? We're going to make sure that we don't run into this problem again. That third quarterback spot is there. You don't have to, but you may want to keep them.
I'm very curious. To me, that is a central decision on what you do with those last couple of spots. Do you want to keep 3 on the 53? Aaron texts in, and we're going to name him. We're going to combine him with Scott. Babe Laufenberg, a Cowboys fan. Remember when Babe Laufenberg had to come in for a couple games at the end of a Jimmy Johnson season? It was right before the Cowboys.
That guy.
It was right before the Cowboys got really good and won the back-to-back Super Bowls, right when a young Troy Aikman was starting to hit his stride, but he got hurt. They were awful his first year. Like they went like 1-15.
Okay.
Then they were like 7-7, and he was starting to come around a little bit. Then he got hurt, and they had to put Babe Laufenberg in for the last couple games. They lost them both, and they missed the playoffs.
So when was Jason Garrett to back?
That was a couple years later.
It was a couple years later.
So Babe didn't like. Babe became the radio guy for years and years.
See, I lose the Cowboys when that period between Danny White and Troy Aikman. I'm like, where were they at?
Steve Pelor was in there.
Exactly.
Gary Hogaboon. Remember
Gary Hogaboon. Oh, my goodness. A blast for the fans. Gary Hogaboon. Wow.
Oh, man. But Aaron says, I like Willis over Mason Rudolph. Give Willis the backup spot. I don't think he's going to win that argument, but we're going to find out in a day. Yeah. All right, let's break here because we want the start of the Brian Callahan press conference. That's coming up next here on 102.5 The Game.
Gary
It's Willy and DMase broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. We're awaiting Brian Callahan to take the podium, the final press conference before the cuts are announced. Tomorrow is a day off for the team. You know, this used to happen over Labor Day weekend. Now they get it done earlier. The practice squad is bigger, so there's different dynamics than there were back when you were playing DMase, where I always remember over Labor Day weekend, like figuring out, are they going to add anybody new? And then, hey, they got a game next week. You know, it used to be a little later that they would make the final cuts. Now it's all done at this point. And that's what has me intrigued on how you try to play the game of keeping the guys you like, even if they're not in your 53.
Yeah, I do. When the NFL decided to switch it over, instead of doing it in waves, the actual cut. Now you can cut anybody in between, but the actual cut down date is, for everybody on the same day. So it allows, teams to stay a little bit fresher, not have to, guys don't have to play extra plays and, extra plays in practice or in a game because you don't have enough bodies because you cut people. So I do like the way the NFL, and it's been like this for a while, but it's everybody is on the same sort of level as far as if you want to be picked up or not. Because a lot of times what it was a guy get cut the first round, he goes to another team, and then that team picks him up, and then you got another round of cuts, and another player gets cut somewhere else, then you end up cutting that player, then you end up adding. So it was a bunch of moving pieces, too many moving pieces, I would say. And the NFL wanted to sort of clean all that up, and I'm sure it's for other reasons as well, but it just makes everything a lot cleaner.
This is one thing.
One big cut.
Yeah. And the other thing that I think about with that is with the expanded, and this happened as a result of the COVID, because they wanted to give people more players in case you had an outbreak, but they've kind of kept it. So they liked it enough, is the bigger practice squad. It used to be 4 to 7 guys for a while.
Yeah.
And everybody else was on the street. Now you can keep a stable of 15, 17 guys.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes me wonder how that affects plucking people off of somebody else's practice squad. Like, I think some people like their guys, but we'll get back to that. Let's hear from Brian Callahan.
And so that's kind of where we're at. This only new news from the injury front is that one. So other than that, I'll let you guys ask questions.
Knee that he's hurt twice before.
That I'm not clear on. I'm not sure.
He had obviously a great camp for preseason. How much you paid for a guy like that?
Yeah, I mean, he was playing about as good a football as you could ask of a guy. He's really coming on strong and playing a really good brand of football for us. And heartbroken for him. He was doing everything we asked of him and doing it really well. So disappointed for him, disappointed for us, but that's the way it goes sometimes.
What's the latest on some of the other guys, Otis Reese, Luke Gifford, at that inside backer position?
Yeah, those guys are both in the protocol, so we should hopefully get them back this week. As is kind of tentative. We don't have much to do with that. It's more they got to get cleared independently. So, but those guys are both should be cleared next week and should be good to go.
How about Cedric Gray?
Cedric's still dealing with the same thing he's had. It's a shoulder, but it's nerve related. So it's more of a when does it come back and how does it feel? So no real timeline on him at this point. Unsure is the best way to put it. Yeah, he is. He's in the same group. Those guys, they're all kind of in the same, right about the same timeline. That Seattle week is where they all popped up for the most part. So that's the hope. And, yeah.
Is Cedric a guy who could be on the return to play to start the season, or is it too up in the air?
Too up in the air right now to know that for sure. Yeah, I'm not totally sure where that would be at this current moment.
When you're a little bit shorthanded in draft picks like you guys were this season, I think you had 6, right?
Mm-hmm.
How good is it that some of these undrafted guys can kind of come in and maybe earn a roster spot and supplement that rookie class?
Yeah, anytime you got undrafted guys that can come earn a spot, that's a huge benefit. That and your late round picks. Your 5th, 6th, 7th round picks. If you can get contributions from those guys, That's huge for the depth of your roster, for the cost of your team. I mean, there's a lot of benefits to being able to hit those picks, and I think this year we've done a pretty nice job. I mean, we're looking at pretty significant contributions, I think, from all the guys in that draft class at this point. And then obviously we got some UDFAs that have made their mark as well. So that's how you build a team. That's how you build depth, and that's how you find players, is the work you do in those later rounds. And I think our scouts have done a great job in that process. Really, they're the ones that find those guys, and we got to keep doing that. That's how you keep building your team and keep building your depth, is hitting on those, day 3 picks, essentially, that 4th through 7th round, and your CFAs. So successful teams hitting those spots, and we need to keep doing it.
Turk, or how's your process work for contacting guys and calling?
I think we have the benefit of a general manager that's been cut a lot of times, and so he understands the sensitivity of it. He understands what it looks like when you're having guys walking down and escorting them around a building and all that stuff. So we don't have a Turk per se. Our scouting assistants work that process, but we try to do it with as much dignity as you can for those players.
Do you deliver a message to guys who made it, or do they just know when they don't get a phone call?
I think for the guys that are unsure of their status, you like to let them know that they have made it. You're also a little bit careful, because just because you make it through the initial wave doesn't mean you make it through the other wave that comes. And so you just sort of wait till it all plays out officially before you tell a guy's made the team and you cut him a day later. So you be mindful of that. But guys that have actually played their way onto the roster, you like to let them know. I think that's a cool moment as well for those guys. But most guys have a pretty good feel for where they stand, and it's just those last couple spots that you may have to let them know.
Have you guys made a decision yet on whether you use one or the 2 IR spots available?
Not yet.
You talked a lot about being excited about different benchmarks in your first go around. Is this the couple days of a benchmark that you're not excited about at all?
No, not at all. Like as I've said, it's you got relationships with these guys. They play hard, they practice hard, they do everything you ask. And sometimes you're cutting good players. Sometimes you cut guys and that might be it for their football journey. Some guys you cut that are going to go on and play for somebody else. And you hope that they play well and you wish them well, but it is not a process that is very enjoyable. I don't know if you can see the joy emanating from me today, but it's not fun just because the amount of respect you have for guys and what they've done and how they've gone about their business. It means a lot to me as a coach, and you appreciate it. That's the best way you can go about it, is just you thank them for their contribution and their efforts, and you hope that it works out. And if you can help them in the future, you try to. But it's not a very fun benchmark to check off for me.
You manage the week. Obviously, a lot of roster moves being made. Also trying to work ahead toward the Bears. Can you do some of that at the end of the week, or how to manage it?
Yeah, we've kind of taken time on the Bears at various points, just kind of through training camp. It's week 1 always makes it pretty easy, just because you have a lot of time and you have the off season in the summertime, and so a lot of preliminary work's been done, and then we'll get into the game plan. I'm always really mindful of this time of this weird chunk of time where you don't want to spend too much time, because you overdo it and you overanalyze, and it just feels like the first game takes forever to get here once you get to the spot. So just mindful on getting guys back healthy, still getting some work in, but maybe a little bit more focused just on our process. And you start the game week when you start the game week, because you already get an extra day with Monday. Monday's a bonus day on top of it. So a little bit more focus on ourselves and what we can improve over a couple of days of practice, and then get back into the routine of this season. Because you spend all this time on Chicago and it's your week 1, and all of a sudden week 1's over, and then they start coming every 7 days. And so the rhythm is a part of it too. You want to make sure you're kind of not doing more than you need to for the first game.
Your call sheet seems more modest than what we see some play callers carry on the sideline. Is that the size of what you'll have in a regular season game, and what's kind of your strategy as you put that together? Yeah,
that's about it. I mean, we got plenty of plays. I think one of the things that I've learned over time is that you can have plays that you work on. There's sort of like a how long you're going to cook a play for it's ready for action. And so sometimes you carry some plays that you're not going to use, and you kind of work on them week by week. And when they're ready, use that, like with specials and trick plays and things like that. You have a core of what you do that you can sort of call whenever, that those plays are sort of always in the game plan. And then you have your handful of game plan plays that you use, and you have your run game plan. So the way it's all set up on the call sheet, generally we've kind of refined the number of plays we need in each section, because you can only practice so many things too. And so that's a part of it, is making sure whatever we have on the call sheet, we have a chance to rep and practice. So the quarterbacks get those throws, receivers get those looks, and then you try to carry over what you can that fits for the next week, because you got reps invested in it. And so I think that's generally been a successful way of going about it. But
a much longer one and wonder, hey, what must be on there, or how do they?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, they're certainly ambitious. I mean, I've been around guys that have had those types of call sheets, and there's everyone's got their own process. One of the things I've really believed in is being able to make sure that whatever you're calling, you're practicing, and so give you guys the best chance of success, and hopefully you practice it for a while, and so that's why you have a system in a sense that you can fall back on. But I do wonder, sometimes some of that stuff is just information. You have a lot of things on there. Even the back of my call sheet has a lot of end of game calls and 2-minute calls and things like that, the amount of times I actually look at that back of the call sheet is very rare, but it's all on there. And so it looks like there's a lot, but it's not very usable sometimes. So that's probably the best way I could describe that.
When you went back through the film, how pleased were you with how Will was able to survey the field and make the right reads, and also how he decided not to throw a block on the blown up reverse?
Yeah, no, that was a smart decision by Will. I told Will at the beginning of the game, look, man, throw the ball away. Like, we don't need a repeat of the goal line collision that you had against San Francisco. He knows that. He was great. And so we called the reverse just to try to get the ball in Quan's hands. And they had been playing a bunch of man coverage, and it would have been a lot better versus man, but we ended up getting quarters. And so there's really an extra hat over there. And Will made the right decision to just bypass the guy that in a game he normally would try to seal. He just sort of ran to the sideline. There wasn't really much else that could have gone good on that play. That was probably one I regret, but just a chance to see if we could get ball in Jaquan's hands. But he did the right thing, and the smart thing is avoid the contact in that particular spot. But really happy with how he's played in the preseason, what he's shown, how he's managed the offense. He's moved the ball, which is the name of the game for quarterbacks, is we're trying to score points, and he's done that with his opportunities. And as I said last night, I understand that preseason records and preseason stats aren't predictive in any way, shape, or form of any future success whatsoever. But it doesn't mean nothing. There's things that we take from it that matter. And so I've been encouraged about where we're at. I think we still have a ways to go, but happy with what we've shown.
Clarify the third quarterback rule under the league initially sounded like they make a change, then they didn't make a change. And then how much you think those two guys, Mason and Malik, did their part to make the decision hard? Yeah, they have to be on the active roster, so you got to carry 3. That's how it works. You could still practice squad a quarterback and then still elevate them, but they're still counting. It's not like a free spot. Like, it comes across like you get a free spot for a third quarterback, but it's not. It's a roster spot, and it's a real one, and you got to carry them on your 53 to get that emergency quarterback. So I would love it if they just made it a 54 spot or a 47 spot on game day or whatever that is, where you could just carry a third quarterback and they can enter the game. If you need them to enter the game, that would be great, but that's not the way it works. And I know they don't want to necessarily pay a 47th spot on game day on top of it. So I get how all of it works, and it sounds appealing, but it's still a roster spot at the end of the day. But Malik really showed well for himself in that game. I thought he played well. He put some really nice throws on tape. You still see his athleticism with the ball in his hand. And then Mason just kind of continues to be like the epitome of consistency. And every time he goes in there, the team moves, he completes the ball, and we find success. And it's been really good to see. Both of those guys have competed. I think they've both improved markedly from when we first started in OTAs. And I'm excited about what they've done. And whether that means we keep 3 or we keep 2 and put one on a practice squad, or we just keep 2, we're working through those decisions, over the next 48 hours. And but they've certainly made that decision hard, and that's their job, to make that decision difficult and put something positive enough on tape and make our conversations, we have to really think long and hard about how we're going to handle that. So I'm happy for both those guys for the way they've played and what they've shown.
Is there some new rule regarding, or was there maybe just for one game regarding what you could look at on the surface?
Yeah, we had the league been for the last couple of years now. They've introduced the video on the surfaces. We had it for the first game where you actually get like the live video from the series as opposed to just the still shots on the surface. And so we've done that. That's happened now a couple of maybe 3 years now. Might even be more than that. They've kind of toyed and gone back and forth. I mean, high school teams have video on the sidelines now, you know, so I think that's trending towards probably something we'll see sooner than later, I think, for us. But they tried it for the first game and worked through it, and then went back to still shots for the other two. So it's always good though. You don't have time to watch it necessarily. I think that's kind of the unique part, is that you're going through the series so quickly that actually watching the play takes longer, and you don't have enough time for all that. But sure does help to have that live video. You can see what went wrong with a little more clarity than just a still shot.
From Oliver, from when you first started seeing OTAs to what he's been showing in the preseason.
Yeah, he's another one of those guys that's shown well for himself. He's got some size, and he can run. He's got some legitimate speed. You see it on the field. He probably is faster than he looks, if that makes sense. He covers a lot of ground, and he does it pretty quickly. And sometimes he's a smooth runner, so you don't feel it the same way you feel some guys. But he chews up a cushion on DB, and he chews up ground, and he can really run. The thing that I think is the most impressive is he's got really, really strong hands, and some of those catches he made are, that's impressive to see. So. Again, he's another guy that's come a long way since he got here in the OTAs and really started to settle in. And you start to see, once these guys know what to do, their talent starts to come out a little bit. And he's one of those guys that's really, had a nice preseason for himself.
Danger and all, and some guys performing too well.
Yeah, there is. I mean, yeah, you start to like guys, and all of a sudden you cut one and someone else claims them because they see the same things you see. Again, I think sometimes that we all value our own players, and that's every team. Every team has someone like Bryce that they like and feel like could be a contributor or a developmental player. So sometimes it's a fear that we place on ourselves, like, oh man, we're gonna lose this guy, but everyone else feels the same way. Not to say that we wouldn't if that's the case, but I think that there's a lot of developmental players that you've invested in, and you hope that their decision, unless they get claimed to an active roster, which again, you're getting claimed to a 53. A lot of guys, prefer to stay with where they've invested their time in the practice world. So we'll see.
There's 3 screens work so nicely. How intricate is it to get a screen to work well, correctly? Mm-hmm. And how much can you do with that, considering the personnel you have?
Yeah. First, the screens have been productive in the preseason in general. They were really good last night. That's really a big part of our offense. All those different types of screens. We have the action screens, we have screens to the Ys, screens to the back, screens to the receivers. The blocking in space is something that we work on, and the reason I called a lot of them is because we needed to work on them and teach off of them over the course of the preseason. And I would even say that for as good as they were, they could be a whole lot better. There's a lot of things technically we need to clean up that I thought we left some yards in the field and all of them, really. So it's a huge part of, I think, a successful offense, especially when you marry those things up, like the screen to Nick Vanette, is off a counter action. And so everyone sees and feels counter, then it looks like a play action pass, and then the ball goes back to the tight end, and we're getting linemen out in space. And so as best we can marry those up in all of our run actions, with all of our drop backs, and it's easy ways to get the ball in our players' hands. And I think that we got enough guys at the skill positions that can make hay when they got space. So it'll be a huge part of what we do, and we'll keep finding ways to be creative with the screens and keep finding ways to get those guys in space with people in front of them.
Yesterday that the offensive line is set at this point going into the regular season. When did you come, and how did you come to that decision, particularly with the 2 right side spots?
It had been trending that direction over the last week. Those guys had really started to separate themselves and play well. In practice, they did some nice things. You could see them gaining some confidence. And then this game was important to see if what we saw in practice was real, just in terms of their fundamentals, the technique, all the things that we were looking for. And then, they did what they were supposed to do in that game, and that sort of finalized it for me at that point. But they've done a nice job. And look, we haven't seen the types of guys that they're going to see. I know what's headed our way. We got some hellacious defensive fronts we got to face, and we have challenges ahead. And but I think that those 5 guys have solidified themselves as our offensive line, and they've gotten markedly better every time we've went out there. So again, so far so good. Happy with where we're at. Long way to go still, but those guys have done a nice job.
Back to the screen a minute. You talked about, being able to get the linemen in space to do their blocking. It seems like that both Skoronski and Radens have done a pretty good job of being able to get downfield and lead that. Is that a particular area where maybe those guys are pretty good as far as either pulling on a run play or leading out on a screen?
I think they're athletic. And so when you have athletic linemen, you can do a lot of things like that. The pulling is a part of it. Being able to get out in space and get attached to defenders in space is hard. They're definitely trying to attach themselves to players that are much more athletic than they are. And so there's a lot of technique that goes into it, but they're naturally athletic players as it is. I mean, Lloyd's really athletic, Peter's really athletic, and so is Dylan. And so those guys have the traits to do some more things for us offensively in the pulling game and the screen game and out in space, which has been good to see. You got to be able to do all those things up front, and I think their athleticism lends to success in that part of the game.
Together, and do you think Daniel acquitted himself well as a skill player?
He did, yeah, he sure did. He had a nice block on the touchdown. I mean, he buried that guy back in the end zone, and we've always been that play plays. We call it 12 blast though. I think my dad's been running that play for maybe every year he's been in coaching. It is not a finesse play. It is a downhill, big people attitude play. And I think if you asked my dad, he'd say that play put me through college. But that's been a part of what he's done forever and ever. And just to be able to show that and to get a chance to work on it, we hadn't worked on it much. That's a tough situation to simulate. There's a lot of pounds and pressure. And so you don't want to do that a lot against your own team in practice. It tends to get pretty messy. And so we tried to make sure we get at least a rep or two of it in the game. And I'm glad we did. Brunskill did a good job. The short yardage one, we got to clean up Will's footwork. He kind of tripped Dylan as he was pulling around. So we didn't quite get the puller through there. It would have been probably a pretty decent play if we did, but it was good. We just needed to practice it and put it on tape and teach off of it. So that's why we tried to get a couple reps of it in this last game.
You talked a few times about David Martin Robinson, and he obviously showed up again. How much of a surprise really was he? Because you guys obviously saw something in him to want to bring him to camp, but the amount of production he's been able to give you, how much of a surprise is that?
Yeah, it was a surprise. I mean, when we first brought him in the rookie mini camp, I was like, this guy seems like he moves pretty well for as big as he is, and just kind of caught your eye. I mean, again, it's just moving around in shorts, and so that part was cool to see to start. And then he's really, ascended. Like every chance he's gotten better. Every chance to make a play, he's made it. He's the poster child for what it takes to make a team as a UDFA, and he's been fantastic. I mean, there's no discounting his skill set's real. He's physical in the run game. Surprise is the word. But as we've watched, the more I've watched him and gotten to know him, though, I shouldn't be surprised because that's his mindset. He's mature. He's professional. It's important to him. He takes coaching. He makes improvements quickly. Those things are all traits that would lead guys to be able to, to show well and have a chance. So, like I said before, I think Justin Outen's done a fantastic job with that room from top to bottom. Those guys have really, really, really matured and as tight ends and really played well over the course of camp. So, a little tip of my cap to Jo and the job that he's done as well. But that was a room that went from a lot of questions to one that we feel is now all of a sudden pretty deep and pretty strong and been pretty competitive. So that's a good thing.
You regather Wednesday at 69 or 70. I know it tends to feel smaller.
It's shocking that first time we're on the field. Yeah.
You kind of re-message or rebrand, like here we are now. This is,
it always
there might be changes, but this is us.
Yeah. It's the first time that the 2024 team, for the most part, is the real team that's going to take the field for regular season football. And so those things, it feels weird because all of a sudden you go out to practice and then there's no benches or bleachers or people, and all of a sudden, like, where is everybody? You only have a handful of guys, and it's kind of jarring, but it's also like that's always been the reminder. It's like, all right, now it's here now we're going. So I'll remessage a little bit and we'll have a chance to celebrate the guys that make the team. It's it's not always a foregone conclusion. It's not something guys take for granted. Get a chance to play another year of NFL football, and it's fun. It's a fun process this week when you get finalized to, you get your captains voted for. It starts to feel like we're getting ready to go play football.
It was only preseason, but you guys scored 30 points yesterday. You did 35 regular season games since this franchise has hit the 30 mark. How committed are you to trying to end that?
Extremely. Yeah, I like to score 30 points every game. That's usually not how it works in the NFL, but I thought it's a good start for us. I think to instill some confidence that what we're doing can lead to those outcomes. And again, it's been a lot of the guys at the back of the roster that have manufactured those points at the end of games, and that part's been cool to see that they've been able to execute at a level that would allow us to go do that. And again, you're stepping out on the field for an NFL game, and so the intent is to go score as many points as possible and try to win the game. And I think our guys have bought into that, and they've done a really nice job. So yeah, I'd love to end that regular season streak as soon as humanly possible, and hopefully make that more the expectation than not. So I look forward to that. I look forward to the challenge.
Thanks, Brian.
All right, that's Brian Callahan. Detailed press conference. We'll take a pause here. When we come back, we'll get into some of the big bullet points and touch on what we think they're going to do in the next 24 hours here. Some of the things that Brian Callahan likes about this team, his first Titans team, his first NFL coaching job. Stay tuned. This is Willy and DMase, 102.5 The Game.
The MRI came back on Chance, and we'll lose him for the year with an ACL, so he's out. So we've taken two pretty significant hits at the linebacker spot with Wallow and Chance, and then obviously Marlon with his bicep. We've lost him. So that's kind of where we're at. This only new news from the injury front is that one. So
that's Brian Callahan talking about probably the most significant news of the day, just for how it affects the roster, and that is Chance Campbell, who, if you watch the preseason games, he was kind of the hero of all the action, just seemed to be in the middle of everything for all 3 games, and then came off the field yesterday. And you always worry, DMase, you've seen it so many times. You could tell he wasn't in a lot of pain, but he knew something was up. When I tore my ACL, I had that same feeling. In fact, I thought I was all right for a minute. He's walking off the field, and you're thinking, oh boy, because you could see the concern on his face, and sure enough, it's a torn ACL. So, number one, tough for him, because you hate to see a guy who has made strides and looked like he was going to be a contributor at a position where they are thin, and now he's out.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. He was one of those pop guys. Now, whether he would have upseated Jack Gibbons to be that starting inside linebacker, one of them, that's, we don't know if he would have done that. I know he played well, but I don't know if he played well enough to upseat Jack Gibbons at the inside linebacker position. But again, it goes to the depth of the team. Now you've lost depth at your linebacker spot. Then you got Cedric Gray, who you drafted in the 4th round. And frankly, because of the injury, he hadn't shown anything. Is he a guy that either could be put on IR for the season, or a guy they cut and just put him on a practice squad? Because, you haven't been able to see much of him. It's your availability is key in this league, and he hasn't been available, especially as a rookie. So that's another spot they need to fill. Then he talked about, guys being in the protocol. You hope to have some of those guys back prior to the season opener, but you don't know. So they have at least two spots at that inside linebacker position that they have to fill, with Cedric Gray potentially being on IR, and then Chance Campbell, who will be on IR because he's gone for the season.
So, yeah, Campbell will be ACL, gone for the season. We know how that works. Cedric Gray, he said there's no timeline.
He said it was a
nerve-related shoulder problem. And so that tells me, there's already a lot of people speculating that you could use one of the IR spots, have him heal up, and maybe be a part of things after 4 weeks or so. But that does leave you. You've got James Williams, who's a very young, low draft pick who maybe they like at depth. I look at that position and I'm saying that might be the number one spot that Rand Carthon is going to be looking on the waiver wire to see who gets cut, to see if there's an upgrade there. Would you agree, just from where they are? Like after Murray and Gibbons, and there's questions with those guys, right? Because they haven't been a starting tandem for this team, and Murray had mixed results, but he looks like the right fit. He's had an excellent training camp, but you need depth there. They need another guy. I think
they're going to need another guy again. Whether it's, you don't want to put all that responsibility on a guy, like James Williams, who would automatically, because of the lack of depth, because the guys are injured. Now he's elevated. You got no live bodies. Exactly. You don't have enough guys because you've got Otis Reese in the concussion protocol. So you have guys, again, that are in concussion protocol, guys that will be lost for the season or for a part of the season. I would tend to believe that they're going to be pushing hard to bring in at least 2 backers for the depth, because you're hopefully bringing in someone that can play for you immediately in the backer role, because you will not have those guys available to you for the season. Chance Campbell, he's done for the season. Gray, you don't know. You're sort of on this. Do we put him on IR for 4 to 6 weeks? What do we do with him? But it's still a roster spot that will be created because this individual will not be ready for the start of the season. So I think their first course of action is to go out and fill that linebacker spot, the depth on it.
But I would say it's, at least for me, I'm curious. I think you would definitely look at the waiver wire. They've got the favorable position. In the past, when they've been more a team ready to win now and a team that was not picking as high on the waiver wire, I remember several moves at this time of the year where John Robinson would flip a 6th or a 7th round pick to go get a guy in this situation. And for example, there was a trade that the Seahawks made yesterday. They traded a 6th round pick to the Jaguars to get a linebacker. But I would not want to do that right now if I'm the Titans. I want to keep the draft picks. Would you agree that that's probably the better way to go than to give up a draft asset?
Yeah, I think it would be. I wouldn't, try to facilitate a trade to get an individual unless you've earmarked that guy and he can be an immediately impact contributor for you, whether it be as the backup linebacker within the rotation or a special teams guy. If you have sort of zeroed in on a guy, he potentially will not be cut, then you may have to, give up a late pick to get that individual. But typically you don't want to have to do that because there are going to be a lot of guys that will hit the waiver wire, and you are in a position, to sort of get those guys because you're at the top of the list rather than being at the bottom of the list.
Okay. Other things that came up at the press conference. Let's listen in on the story of the third quarterback, because I still think some people are confused about the rule. They now allow you to designate a spot on game day to elevate a third quarterback, but you still have to make the decision on your 53 guys, and the quarterback is no exception. So here is Brian Callahan's assessment of what the decision will be. And they haven't made the decision yet, or at least he didn't tip his hand, but I want to listen carefully what he says about the third quarterback. The decision would be, are you keeping Malik Willis on the 53, or are you going to try to cut him and then sign him to the practice squad, which is sizable, but he is eligible to be plucked by another team if they're willing to put him on their 53.
To make the decision hard.
Yeah, they have to be on the active roster, so you got to carry 3. That's how it works. You could still practice squad a quarterback and then still elevate them, but they're still counting. It's not like a free spot. Like it comes across like you get a free spot for a third quarterback, but it's not. It's a roster spot and it's a real one, and you got to carry him on your 53 to get that emergency quarterback. So I would love it if they just made it a 54 spot or a 47th spot on game day or whatever that is, where you could just carry a third quarterback and they can enter the game. If you need them to enter the game, that would be great, but that's not the way it works. And I know they don't want to necessarily pay a 47th spot on game day on top of it. So I get how all of it works and it sounds appealing, but it's still a roster spot at the end of the day. But Malik really showed well for himself in that game. I thought he played well. He put some really nice throws on tape. You still see his athleticism with the ball in his hand. And then Mason just kind of continues to be like the epitome of consistency. And every time he goes in there, the team moves, he completes the ball, and we find success. And it's been really good to see. Both of those guys have competed. I think they've both improved markedly from when we first started in OTAs. And I'm excited about what they've done. And whether that means we keep 3 or we keep 2 and put one on a practice squad, or we just keep 2, we're working through those decisions, over the next 48 hours. And but they've certainly made that decision hard, and that's their job, to make that decision difficult and put something positive enough on tape and make our conversations, we have to really think long and hard about how we're going to handle that. So I'm happy for both those guys for the way they've played and what they've shown.
So there is a first-year head coach, to me, doing a pretty good job with the poker face. I tried to read between the lines of what he was saying there to see if I could get a sense of what they're thinking. We know Mason Rudolph is going to be the number 2 quarterback.
Yeah.
It's only the question of, are you cutting Malik and trying to get him to the practice squad, or are you keeping 3? I honestly don't think I can lean one way or the other based on what he said there.
It's tough, Willie. Because on one hand, this is a quarterback sort of driven guy, offensive
He's
guy.
the play
So
caller.
you
He's the head
want-
coach, but
so
he's
you're
in
always
charge of
thinking
this
about
offense.
that extra, something extra that will help your offense.
Yeah, and it's not fully his decision, whereas
Exactly.
maybe Vrabel, his predecessor,
Mhm.
had a little more sway if
Yeah.
you wanted to say, I want 3.
But I think he's done. I would tend to believe they will keep that third unless something comes up where they have to move away from that roster spot, because right now they really don't. Chance Campbell is gone for the season. Cedric Gray will be gone for a period of time. They may decide to put him on IR, period. So I know they would have to replace one of those guys with a roster spot,
Yeah.
bringing another.
And you mentioned
backer.
maybe 2, like this.
Yeah, maybe 2, but I think that allows them to really think about that quarterback position, that third quarterback position. It may choose to bring one guy on at that position, meaning linebacker position, to keep that extra quarterback, because we may not think is important in a sense, because we figure if they get down to the third guy, I mean, come on, seriously, they're not supposed to win the game after that. But I think they still have to have that in mind. Like, we need them on our roster just in case anything happens. Even if the first guy gets banged up or missed for a few games, you still got to have a backup to the to the guy that's
and
starting.
Levis, we know Levis will throw his
Exactly,
body in
that's what
front
I'm
of
saying.
anything, and his competitiveness can
Mhm.
get the best of him. Shaky offensive line. That is part of the discussion, I think, in keeping 3. It just, to me, comes down to how sure are you that somebody would take Willis off of your practice squad to put him on their 53?
I think
What's the
way he's
percentage
played.
chance? It's like the nightmare
Mhm.
for the Predators, and I think they knew when they did it, they were rolling the dice, and the odds were not good. When they put Ellie Tolvin on waivers, they were thinking, oh, man, I'm not going to sleep until that waiver wire is over, because I don't know if he's going to slip through. And 22 teams passed on him, but the 23rd team, Seattle, took him, and he was gone. So that is what they have to weigh. Is you've put a lot of time and energy into Willis. He is, I think, a kid that's got good makeup. The team likes him. He works very hard. But weighing that against what are the other options on your roster, the other needs of your roster is big. To me, I'm willing to roll the dice, but I haven't done the 1 through 53 to decide, is it Malik versus X, Y, Z? Is it, we could all throw in David Martin Robinson or the 4th tight end as an obvious, right? But there's probably 3 or 4 guys. Yeah. The 4th running back, a Julius Chestnut. I would take Willis over Chestnut.
Yeah.
I think if Haskins is my 3rd guy, and I deem Chestnut as my 4th, I don't know about the offensive linemen, how many extra guys he likes there.
And that's another thing we need to talk about after the break, Willie.
Yeah.
The offensive line. But briefly, to sort of, end this, this team, I think, I think Willis has done enough to earn the roster spot. I think he has. Now, listen, it hasn't been great like he's a starting quarterback.
He's done nothing to play his way out.
Just like Mason Rudolph hasn't done anything to play himself out of that 2nd spot, Willis hasn't done anything to play himself out of that 3rd spot, which is, ultimately a roster spot that they would have to sort of circumvent somewhere else.
And they didn't even have a live body in camp as the 4th guy. So you would have to pick up a guy that has no idea what the offense is.
And that's another
off
thing
the
that
street,
working toward his,
because you got to have a 3rd guy somewhere.
He knows the offense. You're grooming him within this offense. He's maturing. He's developing. That's why I think if you cut him, someone will pick him up, because they're looking at where he was in year 1 to where he is now. He's not ready to be a starter, damn sure. He could possibly, maybe be a backup, but he's for sure a guy that is developing.
Yeah. And you have to ask, too, could he be your backup next year? Because as we mentioned, Rudolph is on a 1-year deal. So you have to decide to bring Rudolph back, or if you're going to move on from him, where is Willis going to be in a year from now? Is he still making the small increments, or have you just seen enough that he is not a backup in this league? These are all parts of what goes into a large discussion of piecing together the 53. When we come back, we will talk about the offensive line because Brian Callahan had some things to say. They looked really good yesterday against the backups of the Saints, but they were sharp, and he had quite a bit of detail to talk about his starting five. We'll come back with that after this.
A minute. You talked about, being able to get the linemen in space to do their blocking. It seems like that both Skoronski and Radens have done a pretty good job of being able to get downfield and lead that. Is that a particular area where maybe those guys are pretty good as far as either pulling on a run play or leading out on a screen?
I think they're athletic. And so when you have athletic linemen, you can do a lot of things like that. The pulling is a part of it. Being able to get out in space and get attached to defenders in space is hard. They're definitely trying to attach themselves to players that are much more athletic than they are. And so there's a lot of technique that goes into it, but they're naturally athletic players as it is. I mean, Lloyd's really athletic, Peter's really athletic, and so is Dylan. And so those guys have the traits to do some more things for us offensively in the pulling game and the screen game and out in space, which has been good to see. You got to be able to do all those things up front, and I think their athleticism lends to success in that part of the game.
Brian Callahan talking about his offensive line, that they've got the five. Dylan Radens, Nicholas Petit-Frere have won the jobs on the right side. Cushenberry at center, big investment, and then the 2 first-round picks on the left side. I did notice that yesterday. A lot of plays where they would pull Radens, or as we, everybody saw, they threw a bunch of screens where
It
you
seemed
got
like
those
they
guys.
purposely ran to the right side.
I did see some good runs to
Yeah.
the right side behind Radens and Petit Frere. And again, it was against the JV. We get it. So here's what I'm wondering. He seemed to be pretty eager to hit on the athleticism part of this, right? And again, I'm thinking of the Bill Callahan influence here. What is Bill Callahan telling Brian of what the expectations can be for this lines with where they are right now? Bill Callahan's seen 1 million offensive lines and 2 million offensive linemen, right?
Exactly.
But where are they to start the season? And it didn't seem like there was any hesitation of they can move, they're athletic, and screen game is going to be a big part of what we do. What could that mean?
Getting those big guys out in space and allowing them to use the athleticism that they have to, become a better screen team, to throw teams off. But when you start talking about someone's, like, that's the first thing you bring up, someone's athleticism, that means they haven't really shown you a lot in other areas. Because you're always talking about what do we talk about with Traylon Burks? He's big, strong, and fast. The tools, but he hasn't put it all together. So we can only talk about the potential, or, what this tool can do if used properly. Well, we haven't seen it. So that's the only thing we can really go by. That's the same thing with the offensive lineman. And this is why I'm still a little bit concerned about that right side, even though, and we talked about this last week, Willie, even though, yes, it's solidified. Yeah, you got him. But there was no real true competition there. And it says they've been trending this way for a while. Well, Nicholas Petit Frere just got into the lineup not too long ago. So how can it be trending that way that fast? Has he shown, and listen, I'm not in the meeting rooms. I'm not out there every day in practice. Has he shown that much improvement and development that it was trending that way, and basically that's what the right side of the line will look like? Cushenberry, Radens, and PT, Nicholas Petit Frere. To me, I still have a problem with that. Nicholas may turn out to be great for this team. Raiders may turn out to be great. Obviously, they've gotten better.
I would take average now.
Average. Obviously, they've gotten better, but there was no competition there, whatsoever.
They really didn't get pushed.
Yeah, they didn't get pushed. Other than possibly by the coach, Bill pushing them and them wanting to earn a spot on the roster.
I think that's what I'm getting at, is there has to be an honest conversation between father and son in this case, right? Of, okay, here's what I think can be the expectation. And it could be that, hey, they're not ready to do X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
So think about that when you put together your call sheet, your play sheet of what you can run and what you can't with these guys. That's why I'm curious about the screens, all of the pulling that they
want to
did.
Get those big guys out in space.
Now, I'll say this. When I watch Latham, he impresses me. He absolutely ragdolled his guy yesterday. Now, he wasn't going up against Lawrence Taylor or,
Michael Strahan.
Yeah, Richard Dent, guys like that, right? He wasn't going against that guy. But
Carl Mecklenburg,
But he absolutely was way better and more talented than the guys he was blocking yesterday. And they protected well. So I don't know. I see the athleticism with him. I feel pretty good about long term. And I always remind myself, he's 21.
Yeah.
He's 21 years old. He is going to be one of the youngest guys.
Well, Nicholas is young too.
Nicholas Petit Frere is only 24.
Yeah.
And this is his third year.
Yeah.
So he came into the league young. But I'm still measuring expectations on those two guys, because they've been here for 3 years. We know what they do well and what they don't. They've both had injury situations and things that have hampered them. So I will fully salute Bill Callahan if he gets average play from those guys. I just like to see those guys stay out there because they have run skill. And then after that, it is a lot of major question marks on who they would go to if they lose.
Look at the two positions on this team. What two positions do I believe have gotten significantly better? I think the tight end position and the wide receiver position. The running back position, yes, it got better because you add, Pollard to Spears, who I think watch out, Spears is going to be the most dynamic player on this offense. Mark my words. He may end up being the MVP of
I
this
think
offense.
they have a good feel for how to use him in
Yes,
this
and
offense.
it's I can't wait to see the season and they really get entrenched into using him and all. This kid's going to be dynamic.
So if you could pick him or Pollard, like let's say you need a fantasy running back, and it's the whatever round, the 8th, and you're like, which one do I pick? They're both there. Would you lean towards Spears?
I would lean towards
for his
Spears.
upside.
Yeah, I would lean towards Spears.
I kind of think the same thing, even though Pollard looked
Pollard's
really
is a good player now.
Good.
Listen,
he looked good.
Pollard is a good player, and I think he's going to be back to the form he was at 2 years ago. I do believe that. But Spears is just a different animal. He's just different out there than a lot of other people.
How about when he launched himself and almost?
Yeah, it's just the stuff that I think he can do.
I thought he was gonna get hurt for a second.
Yeah, he needs to stop doing that. I think they probably told him down on the sideline too, like, bro, you can't be jumping up in the air like that. Get yourself hurt. But what I was initially saying, the two positions that I feel have gotten significantly better: the running back position, meaning the tight end position, the receiver position. Why? There's competition. There was competition at that position. So each one of them pushed each other. And we saw the outcome. We look at the tight end position. Are they going to keep Martin Robinson, the fourth tight end? Are they going to keep that 7th receiver? Because all these guys have been pretty much playing really well in camp. I don't look at the right side of the offensive line and say that. I just can't. And I think that's the position that needed
that's
competition. That really needed the competition on that right-hand side, and they didn't have it. It was like, okay, you're the starter by default. You're a good player, we believe, but no one really pushed you. That's why I'm worried about the right side of the line. Not to say they're not going to get the job done. I'm just worried that when they start facing competition week in and week out, they will be exposed.
I also think it will tell us a lot if they're scouring the waiver wire for another offensive lineman because of the depth, not just about Radens and Petit Frere, but do they feel like they really need to bolster what's behind that? We'll find out. We'll talk to TD about some of these guys. I had a couple people on our text line driven by Wilson County Hyundai.com talking about the linebacker from the Rams, Ernest Jones, that has asked for a trade. I'm not big on trading draft picks for this team this year, but they do need a linebacker. We'll talk to TD about that when we come back and other Titans issues. And we will also get into the Askarov situation, the trade that happened on Friday right after we got off the air. We'll get our discussion in on that during this coming up hour as well. You're listening to Willy and DMase. All right, let's talk Loan Pronto. Great news for homeowners. Mortgage rates are tanking. That's good. It's down. So if you're a homeowner, that means if you have a mortgage rate over 6%, you need to talk to Loan Pronto. That is 615-499-5780. Get the lowest rate while it's locked in. Get locked in with that because, number one, if you act now, you can even skip your next 2 house payments. But really, the long-term thing is it's going to cost you less on your mortgage payment each month. So if you got stuck with a high mortgage rate, call Loan Pronto right now. Don't wait any longer. 615-499-5780. You can save money. Plus, this is a process that is much more streamlined. Ask about that zero-cost rate reduction home loan. You can lock in the lower rate, no closing costs. Matter of days. It used to take a lot longer. The paperwork is gone, and usually no appraisal. So it's a much more streamlined process, mostly digital. Again, 615-499-5780 or loanpronto.com. Equal housing lender, NMLS 166-1781, on approved credit, NMLSconsumeraccess.org. Willy and DMase, final hour of the show on this Monday. A lot going on. The Titans 1 day away from making the cuts. The Predators on Friday traded Yaroslav Askarov. We're going to have our thoughts on that later in the hour, but it is time to talk to TD, fresh off of the Brian Callahan press conference. Also, big news around the NFL. CeeDee Lamb has signed, and it's a mega contract for him, which is definitely going to change the bar, right? $136 million, 100 of it guaranteed, a $38 million signing bonus.
So it's essentially it's a 4-year deal, $100 million guaranteed. So you're talking 25 per year in that, but then you add in a signing bonus. I think when you look at it, it's a massive deal, but I think it's really not as big as what it looks like as far as the guarantee money. It's still a big deal, but it doesn't put it, because I think did Jefferson get more in guaranteed money?
I don't know the answer to that. Let's bring up TD.
Yeah, he might know.
TD, give us your first impression. You see those numbers for the CeeDee Lamb deal.
No, I think it's a great deal. My first impression is the Cincinnati Bengals are up next.
Yeah,
yeah,
they had to get something done. They had to, because you can't go into a year not having your guy, especially a year when you're trying to really kind of have that what could be the last dance with Dak Prescott. Micah Parsons is going to want to get paid too, so that's something to keep in mind. But I mean, $100 million guaranteed. That's a new mark, right? Because Justin Jefferson, his was in the $88 million.
110.
Oh, so his was
Justin
110 guaranteed. TD. Justin Jefferson.
110.
Yeah, guaranteed.
Okay, yeah. You know what? I remember what threw me off about that is what he got at signing. The guarantee at signing was 88. That's the number. Yeah.
So TD, let's turn our attention to the Titans here. With Chance Campbell going down with the ACL at a position that they were already maybe a little bit thin, depth is a big question for this entire team for sure. Would you say wide receiver is the number one position that they're scouring right now for help?
Wide receiver?
No, inside linebacker.
Oh, okay. You said what I say. Wide receiver is the number one. Yeah, inside linebacker. So everybody's making this to do about trading for Ernest Jones, which it looks good, but I mean Otis Reese is on the roster, and that is Ernest Jones. You know what I mean? So really, what I think they're going to do is they'll look. I mean, there are some guys that that could shake free from other places, but I think you look at the depth that they have. James Williams, right? He's a guy that I think is a lot to make the roster. The Cedric Gray situation, we'll see what happens there, but I think they're going to naturally be looking for some guys. And I mean, if you want a guy that I think could shake free, I don't know if you guys watched the Jets-Giants game, but there's a linebacker named KJ Cloyd, man. That dude was all over the place, and he had 16 tackles in that game. So there's an option right there.
Now, TD, what do you think they do at the tight end position? Because Will and I have been talking about this, and I said amongst all the positions on this team, tight end, because of the competition that was in that room, I think it elevated that room, that they could potentially be one of the bright spots, to continual bright spots for this team. But do you think they keep that fourth tight end, and is that fourth tight end Martin Robinson?
Yeah, I would be shocked if Martin Robinson doesn't make the roster and is the fourth tight end. That's something I've been talking about for the last 2 weeks. He just has come in. They knew about his athleticism. They knew he was, a guy that they could use in different roles, but they didn't realize that he could block the way that he did. And that's why if you notice, Brian Callahan, he pointed to him as one of the guys that came alive when the pads went on. Yeah, that's because he was knocking people's heads, and I think you saw that in games, joint practices. So the tight end group overall, man, Thomas Odukoya has had a solid camp, but unfortunately, David Martin Robinson, DMR, he's had a better one, and he is a more athletic player. And I mean, you even got Steve Stilianos, who quietly, made some plays and has stood out at times too. So it was a strong group. I think they keep 4 because you just never know. Josh Wiley has, encountered some injuries in his first year and change in the league. So I would be shocked if they didn't keep 4. Nick Vannett is a solid veteran, and they could use in multiple ways also.
Now, TD, tell me, how did you, see this last preseason game, or how did you evaluate it? Because listen, we knew going in that the veterans were going to play, and they were going to play a lot. And if they look bad, obviously it would have been a talk of the town, but they didn't look bad. But I looked at it more so of the operations of the offense and how Will Levis did operating within the offense and not taking what the defense gave them and sort of running this, as he would say, not getting bored with the boring things. He didn't get bored with some of the boring things. But how did you see the offense as a whole? Because they were playing against the second and third unit.
Yeah, they were playing against the second and third unit. That's correct. But I'll say this. You always are going to help the offensive line when you stay out of that. You don't get penalties on third down, right? And make it third in all of Louisiana, and that helped an awful lot. So you do have that. And then operation-wise, I mean, you saw some of the play calls kind of develop. I mean, you look at that route combination with where Calvin Ridley had the deep catch across the middle. You had that arrow route from Tyler Boyd clearing it out. You know what I mean? And then you look at the Tyler Boyd's deep catch on the outbreaking route. You had Traylon Burks, clearing it out. And everybody talks about Traylon Burks. Oh, he didn't have an impact. He didn't catch a pass. You can impact the game by dictating coverage and opening it up for somebody else. And that's what he did on that play. I think that's the thing that stood out to me. You saw them in the screen game. You saw actually stuff be schemed up and guys getting open, not necessarily because of their premier route running, but because of the scheme. I thought that was really interesting. And then the timing of Levis to be able to hit those guys, that's something that stood out to me.
We'll talk with Teron Davenport, talking Tennessee Titans in our last preseason game. They're off for 2 weeks until their season opener versus the Chicago Bears. Now, TD, I may be a little bit worried about the secondary. Obviously, I'm not talking about the starting unit because, those guys were not out there. But the depth behind them, and it's young depth too. They didn't look as well in the game. New Orleans were able to pass the ball, it seemed, at will at times. So that part I am worried about. What do you say?
Yeah, I mean, fortunately, these are guys that probably won't see the field. But one of them, Jarvis Brownlee Jr., he had a tough game.
Yeah, he did.
And you're not always going to be perfect, right? So you got to acknowledge that. But he did. He had a tough game. And I think this is part of the reason why they're nursing Chidobe Awuzie so much, why they're nursing, and managing L'Jarius Sneed. Roger McCreary, he's just tough. Like he's going to be there. You know what I mean? You just know he's going to be there, but after that, I mean, you look at your Trey Averys, you look at your Gabe Judy Lawley, who had an outstanding mini camp, but training camp, he kind of came back down to earth. So now you are stuck in a position where you don't necessarily have a lot of depth there. And that is something where they're going to have to pray that everybody stays healthy.
We know how that goes in the NFL. It is not easy to keep everybody healthy. You're going to have issues. Teron Davenport is with us. Teron, that first defensive series, what an unbelievable series of 4 plays by T. Sweat, right? And we still have not seen him in a real game situation playing next to Jeffrey Simmons. I still get very excited thinking about that, and I'm asking myself, is this real? But you think about all of the major questions that people had about him from the draft all the way through the summer. Man, it's almost like, I mean, contrast that to where we are now. And now there's like high expectations for Devondre Sweat, I think.
Yep. I tell you what, if I'm Lloyd Cushenberry, Peter Skoronski, and Dylan Ravens, like everybody's happy that camp's over. But if I'm them, I'm especially happy because I'm not having to go against, Sweat and Simmons in practice every day anymore. And I'll say this, I talked to Tavondre Sweat after the game yesterday, just, on the side. And I want to bring it to everybody's attention on the air. All this talk about attitude, all this talk about off the field, all this talk about laziness, dedication, overweight, out of shape. Guess what we haven't heard one thing about?
Not one thing.
All of training camp. Not a single thing. The guy has been Jesus of rookie prospects. You know what I mean? He's been flawless, essentially, just from that perspective. And I think that needs to be highlighted because everybody had a lot to say when he was coming in and all this stuff was being, thrown on his name. So I commend him for that. But then the play itself, I mean, look, he's doing exactly what you want him to do, right? You get the third down pressure, you cloud things up against the run. It's going to be fun watching those two wreck shop. And don't forget about Sebastian Joseph-Day, who is a solid player in his own right. So it's going to be that front. It's going to be very, very tough for teams.
I saw Jalen Harrell again making some plays. He drew a holding call. He consistently has a pretty good push from the edge there. What's your expectation level for him? Now, because it's one thing to be the guy that impresses in camp. It's another thing to be a guy that makes impact when the season starts.
Yeah, my expectation is to be in the rotation. My expectation is to be a special teams player as well. Last year, Caleb Murphy had a pretty good camp, and stood out. So this isn't something we haven't seen before, but I don't really expect to see much of an impact from him actually on the defensive side of things. I think that really comes down to Landry and Key, but he'll definitely be in the rotation.
Okay, I'll ask you the same question about Jaquan Jackson because he really flashes when he gets the ball. He's got that acceleration. He's got that change of direction. He receives the ball well, not only as a kick returner, but when you see him make a catch as a wide receiver, he looks different than a lot of guys. So what do you think? Is it time to get excited about him?
Yeah, I wouldn't really expect to see much from him on offense, but in the return side of things, yeah, I would be excited. And one of the things that I think has kind of gone under the radar is even in practice, I haven't seen him drop any punts. And he had a bit of an issue handling things at times at Tulane. And Cole Anderson said that they've worked on that, and he's just done a really good job with it. So you do have that. I got to talk to his parents before the game yesterday. I went up to it. I just said, I need to know where this young old man came from because he is an old soul, and I like that about him, and that has allowed him to just kind of come in and be able to find his role, and things clicked in that Seattle, or rather the punt return he had, and he's been off and running since. And he's a big Derek Mason fan, by the way, too.
TD, the starting quarterback, and back to Jackson for a second before we talk about Malik Willis. Yeah, tell him my dance moves are on point, man. Them dance moves are on point, okay?
But is he aware that Derek Mason said he reminds me of myself?
Oh yeah, that's how
okay,
the whole thing
good.
started. That's how I talked to him after practice last week, and he didn't really have a full grasp. So I said, hey, listen, man, this guy, he's the best receiver to ever wear a Titans jersey. You got to understand that. So I shot him the highlights to watch, and he came back and he was like, yeah, that dude, he is the truth. You know what I mean? So,
okay.
Yeah.
Now, Malik Willis, obviously, the whole thing with Malik, I believe is his development. Has he developed? Is he seeing the field much different than what he did last season? And what I can honestly say, looking back to his first season and now, he's a different quarterback. He's seeing things a little bit different. His feet are not as antsy as they once were. Now he's still looking to get out there at times, but he's also looking down the field trying to deliver the ball. Has he done enough to warrant that third quarterback spot? And do you think they keep a third quarterback?
I think just the developmental intrigue that he has is going to keep him on there. You know, Mason Rudolph is here on a 1-year deal. I wouldn't be opposed to bringing him back next year, to tell you the truth. But, you know, if they don't, having Malik there to kind of move right into that role would be good for them. So I think he does come back. And then not to mention, you look like when they played the Eagles, right? You know, he was Jalen Hurts for the week. That does have some value as well, you know. So I think they do put him on there. 3 quarterbacks, 4 tight ends, you know what I mean? And they'll end up having to go a little bit more shallow at another position. But I think Willis is better than, you know, maybe the 7th receiver or the 6th safety, maybe even the 5th safety, you know?
So if you had to put a percentage on it, what's the percentage chance that he's on the 53, Malik Willis?
I mean, I play along. I would say, 60%.
So you think it's a decision, though? 60-40 is still people in the room saying maybe we could slide him to the practice squad, because that's the decision.
Yeah, because you're going to have Cole Anderson banging the table, you know, saying, hey, man, Hassan Haskins, you know. You're going to have Steve Jackson banging the table and saying, hey, man, Matthew Jackson, Mike Brown, Shy Carter. You know, that's what you're going to have. Bill Callahan, and as much impact as he has. Okay, Jerron Christian, you know, Latavius Simmons, you're going to have that.
Now, do you think there was true competition on that right side? Because we're
talking offensive line.
We're talking offensive line. And because I look at it and I get it. You know, Brian Callahan say, listen, this has been trending this way for the last couple of weeks. And I get all of that. But to me, there was really never truly like a competition battle, because when Nicholas Petit-Frere came back, they inserted him in the lineup. And Rayton's been there. So to me, if you look at the bodies that were behind them, they really didn't push him. At least that's my belief.
Yeah, well, look, they wanted Sadiq Charles to start at right guard, and they wanted MPF, Nicholas Petit-Frere, to start at right tackle, right? And they wanted the power of Sadiq Charles. We know what happened there. He retired, boom. Okay, so now Dylan Radins, you know, gets inserted into the position. Andrew Rupchich pushed a little bit, but, you know, they just more or less settled on, okay, this is the direction they want to go. I don't think it was a true competition. I think John Ojukwu in camp, you know, just kind of, he played himself out of it, frankly, right? And then I think Jalen Duncan is Jalen Duncan. I'll be nice with that. It is what it is, you know, and it just worked that way to where, you know, those are the guys that are on top of the depth chart.
All right, Teron, finish with this. I think you are as aware as anybody, because you writing for ESPN, you guys do a lot of collaboration and there's predictions and things like that. I cannot find a single prediction that has the Titans in the playoffs from the outside. But I see a team that I think does look for a first-year coach, a young first-year coach, young quarterback. They look like a team. They look like they have some pretty good chemistry. They feel pretty good. You hear it coming out of their locker room. So they have the opportunity, I think, to sneak up on some people. But how optimistic are you that they could overachieve?
Yeah, this league wants parity, right? It wants parity. So things are set up, you know, for that. And the other thing you got to remember, the Titans spent $318 million in total money this offseason, right? The last 8 teams that led the offseason in guaranteed money, only 2 of them didn't go to the playoffs, right? So that lets you know. This team, I think 8-9 wins is it's a modest, it's a reasonable expectation for this team. And with how this division seems like it's going to go, that's enough to at the very least be competitive, right? And there you have it right there.
Okay. And
with the talent on the roster, I think they definitely can, you know, the potential for 10 to 11. Now, don't mark me and say, hey, TD says the Titans will win 10 or 11 games. But things can shift that way with a little ball bouncing a different way here, bouncing that way there.
That's the beauty of the NFL. Teron, great stuff. We'll talk to you after the cuts have been made, and we'll see who the 53 are.
No doubt about it. Francisco Lindor, MVP. MVP.
I like the sound of that. Man, they should have brought Edwin Diaz in to start the 8th yesterday, Teron. He was fresh. I'm still not very happy about that.
The conversation was going well until that point.
I know, but Lindor is the man. No question about it. Teron, we'll talk to you soon.
All right, peace.
All right, that's TD. Teron Davenport. Listen to Talking with TD, the podcast. You can hear him throughout the week on our station. And, of course, read his stuff on ESPN.com. When we come back, we're going to shift gears. We'll get our interpretation, our analysis of the Yaroslav Askarov trade. The drama, the saga is over. And what is the fallout? We won't know for about 5 years is what it amounts to. But did they get good value? Why did they do it now? We'll talk about it when we come back. Stay tuned. This is Willy and DMase, 102.5 The Game.
Everybody wants to play in the National Hockey League, and every player that's in Milwaukee probably feels that they're ready for the National Hockey League until you're here. And Mitch Korn, who is, as I say, I think is the best in the business. He always says to me, anybody can be a backup goalie until you have to play. And there's a lot of truth to that. It takes a special individual to play as a number one in the National Hockey League, and it takes a lot of growth, slow growth. It doesn't happen overnight, because being the number one goaltender in the National Hockey League is maybe the most difficult job in the National Hockey League to be consistent at. And, to say any young player, and it's not directed at anybody in particular, any young player who says, I'm ready to play in a National Hockey League, that's a statement. But your play and your production and your game will tell your coaches, your management, the fans, if you're ready to play in the National Hockey League.
Barry Trotz on 102.5 The Game Friday afternoon on Stillman and Company. Jared coming up at 2 o'clock today. But that is Barry Trotz immediately after trading Yaroslav Askarov to the San Jose Sharks. So if you were hopped on a plane and you were out of here for the weekend and you kind of checked out after our show, wait, they traded Askarov? They did. It's the drama, all of the what are they going to do that goes back over a year with this fine, talented young prospect now has reached its conclusion, and they have made the decision. They traded him to the San Jose Sharks for David Edstrom, a former first-round pick of the Vegas Golden Knights in the draft that took place in Nashville 2 years ago. He's still only 19 years of age. He is a center, 6'3". They also get a first-round pick next year, which will likely be Vegas's. If you figure that San Jose, who is in a major rebuild, is going to have a high first-round pick, San Jose has the choice of giving them the Sharks' first-round pick or Vegas's first-round pick. Vegas, while they have a chance to slip, is probably going to be picking after the Sharks. So the Predators will probably get Vegas's first-round pick. Edstrom and that pick are exactly what Vegas traded it to the Sharks to get Tomas Hertl. So the Predators get Edstrom, a first-rounder, and they get a goalie named Magnus Krona, who was an NCAA champion, leading Denver to the national title a couple of years ago. 4 years in college. He got thrown to the Wolves last year with a Sharks team that's about as bad as there's been in the salary cap era. I mean, they were really bad. So that was not the team you really wanted to play goal for last year, and Krona took some heat because of that. But the Predators do see him as a guy that could end up being part of their plans in the next year or two. He's going to get a shot in Milwaukee. So, DMase, we left the air on Friday. This goes down. What was your first thought? And you heard Barry say it. I think you can make a pretty strong assessment. What he said there matched up exactly what he told you on July the 3rd.
Yeah,
you can't tell me you're ready.
Mm-hmm.
Your play determines when you're ready.
Exactly. And it's unfortunate. I understand both sides of it. I get it. The GM / former head coach, former coach, Stanley Cup winner, knows how to evaluate talent. I know where he's coming from the standpoint of, hey, listen, you are a hell of a talent, but talent alone ain't gonna get you where we want you to be, or where you ultimately want to be. And that is a top-notch starting goalie in this league, in the best league of all leagues, in this sport. You have the talent, but there's still things that are missing within your game that we're trying to refine, hone in on, allow you to be as close to that final product as possible before we bring you up. That's what the GM Trot sees. That's what he's trying. What have I always said about coaches? They are there to put players in the right position to succeed. That goes along with GMs as well. Putting a young guy in a situation, not bringing him up too fast to damage him, but trying to bring him up the right way, knowing that on the other side, the player, I want to play. I want to play. I'm dominating down here. I want to play. I want to play. But not knowing you still got all of these warts that you haven't worked out just yet. And we're giving you an opportunity to work it out in training camp. If you beat out the second guy, we got to rethink what we're doing and kind of go from there. So I see both sides of the coin, but it's just unfortunate that, you know, it was forced in a sense, even though they didn't have to do it if they didn't want to. But I think what they were getting in return, they were thinking like, okay, this is good. This is good. We could have pushed for more possibly, but this will be good for our organization.
Askarov and his agent clearly made it clear, if that's redundant.
Yeah.
They made it clear that they were going to make life miserable if they didn't just hand Askarov the backup job. And the writing was on the wall. So instead of being patient, playing, doing your job, let your play dictate, keep getting better while they figure it out, he basically forced the trade quick. Now, under those circumstances, I think they got a pretty good return. I think had Askarov bought in and listened to people that may or may not know something about goaltending, like Mitch Korn, Ben Vanderklok, Pecorine.
Yeah.
Use UC Saros as your mentor. All of these guys have done it a certain way and have recommended some things to Askarov. He didn't listen to any of them. He didn't want to hear it. He said, just put me in the NHL.
I just want to play. And look, Willie,
after what happened in the playoffs last year where he got benched and then was not a good sport about it. For example, he was named the backup in the playoffs last year. And what happens when you're the backup is at the morning skate, you stay out there. The starter goes off the ice, starts getting ready for the game after the morning skate. The backup that night is supposed to stay on and continue to take shots, work the rest of the practice. That's just what you do. He didn't do it. These are the things that he was doing behind the scenes to make a big stink. And that didn't fly with Barry Trotz, with Scott Nickel, or anybody else. Were they willing to give him some slack because he is such a talent? Absolutely. Because he has got sky's the limit kind of long-term talent. But his makeup is a part of it. The charisma, the flamboyance, that's one thing. I don't think that was it. I don't that's not Barry Trotz's style. That's not most hockey people's art.
Hey.
But if your attitude is good, you can have a great attitude and still have all the charisma. That's fine. Your branding and all that stuff. But what kind of teammate are you? What's your attitude? He didn't listen to any of those guys. And that was what was really disappointing, because I do think the long-term plan, and I know Joe and Robbie carved me up because I said, look, he could be the backup for the next 2 or 3 years. I stand by that 100%. That could have worked if he bought in, and he would be way better, quicker than the way it's going to go. Now he's going to get thrown to the wolves with the Sharks.
Yeah,
if they're going to put him in the NHL right now, good luck.
You're either going to swim or you're going to drown, one of the two. And, you know, listen, I understand why, you know, it's like, put him out there. I get all of that. But when you're evaluating an individual, your job is to make sure that if you believe in him, your job is to make sure you put him in a situation that is beneficial to him, advantageous for him. You look at his makeup, you look at the talent, you look at the development, you look at, okay, does he have more to work on or not? Will the things he have to work on, can he sort of shake that out in camp and at the beginning of the season, or is it something that I need to sit him back down to the AHL and really work out? Nobody understands that but the GM. Nobody. So when people get on here and say they should, you don't know. If the man that has won a Stanley Cup, a man that knows this organization, a man that is considered one of the best head coaches, former head coaches in the National Hockey League, everywhere he's went, he's advanced the team. He's made the team better. If he's sitting there telling everyone, hey, listen, we're going to give him a shot in training camp. That's up to him, whether he wins that second spot or not. If he wins it, we got to rethink some things. But if he doesn't, we can still sit him down for development. If the GM is telling you that, who are we to question him? That's what I don't understand. It's like we know better than him in regards to this situation. He's watching in Milwaukee, not us. We barely even talk about it other than when you bring it up, Willie. Some people on the state don't like talking about the Milwaukee stuff. So how do you then say, oh, he's ready? So because the counter to that is going to be you throw him out there. Oh, you put him up too early. He wasn't ready. You should have kept him down. Well, Barry knows exactly what he's doing. When hasn't he not known when hasn't he shown you he didn't know what he was talking about since he's been here? That's what I'm saying in regards to Askarov. Hell of a talent. I get it. But we know talent. Talent to get your ass fired. That's what it would be. That's what it would do. And he wanted to make sure that he got this young kid, when he came up to the NHL, he was ready. He's not ready, okay? It may take him a while in San Jose. I hope he works out. I hope the kid does well. But when he was here, the GM didn't feel he was ready. He was going to give him an opportunity in training camp, but before then, he wasn't ready. Prove to me you're ready.
They had a plan. There was no buy-in to the plan. The plan, I think, has a lot of merit. It is time-tested. You heard Pekka Rinne on this station say, I wasn't thrilled going back to Milwaukee for a third year, but it was the best thing that ever happened to me. I don't think he's blowing smoke when he says that. And he was a lot older than Askarov is now. Askarov is a baby in goaltender terms. Barry Trotz made it a point. Look around the league. There aren't a lot of 22-year-old goaltenders, backup or starter, that played regular time in the NHL. He's got some more developing to do. He is not ready. But now we're going to find out what the Sharks do. And we'll see how this year goes for him.
Okay, Willie, tell me this. If you played in the minor leagues, okay, say if it was this big argument, okay, whether to bring Willie up or not, we're trying to figure this out, and everybody's saying, bring him up. He's, the lefty, look at him, he's great, or leave him down. And then you cause such a stink in the minor leagues, and they got to bench you. They bench you for the playoffs. Like, y'all are in the playoffs, and they bench you. What would you think?
Right, but then you're supposed to then turn around after having that attitude. You're supposed to turn around and hand him
exactly
the backup job.
Right,
that's not how it works.
What for y'all that are saying he should? What in the hell are y'all thinking? He can't prove it in the minor leagues that he can be okay, like that he can learn a little bit more. If he can't prove that in the minor leagues, why the hell am I going to bring him up to the big leagues? Because he's going to cause the stink in the big leagues.
And remember, his
attitude is not right.
This is a team that's trying to win the next two or three seasons. While they've got Stamkos and Yossi and these guys, they don't want to bring a circus into the locker room, which is kind of what it would be.
It would have been,
right? And it's enticing. Look, I think in a couple years, if Askarov gets his head on straight and gets well coached and has good people around him, he will grow out of some of this immaturity,
I get
and he's got a chance to be really good. But if he doesn't, it is not a sure thing that he's going to become the star that he may be capable of. And in the meantime, I think the Predators will get top world-class goaltending from UC Saros for the near future. So the question is, what do the Predators get back? We'll get into that on the other side, because we'll tell you what Edstrom is and maybe is not, and where they see that. And if you've got opinions on it, we'd love to hear from them, or we'd love to hear them. 615-737-1025. That's 615-737-1025. What did you think? They made the deal. When they come to training camp, there will be no Askarov storyline to hit on. 615-737-1025. Final segment of the show coming up next.
when it comes to Edstrom, does he slide in as your top center prospect, or where do you view him kind of with the group of prospects that you guys have?
I think, especially at the center position, I obviously I'd like to get him here. He's a year younger, but I would put him and Svechkov are both really good prospects. They're going to play in the National Hockey League. They've got some size, they got some skill. I feel really strongly that they're both going to be players that are going to play big minutes for us and important minutes for us in the future. So, I think we're building a center ice that has some, I'll say some depth to it. And, it started obviously with this trade today, getting, Edstrom. I had an opportunity to see him last year at the Four Nations in Detroit last year. And he was really impressive. And he'll be one of the leaders for the junior team in Sweden this year. So we feel real strongly that we improved our center ice, but we had to do it with giving up a really good prospect in Askarov. But two things I think the other thing that we accomplished, I really felt that, with Askarov coming to camp, and if we didn't have a decision or we hadn't had a move, no matter if we had a good camp or bad camp, I just thought it was going to take a little bit of a distraction to our focus of trying to do really well this year. And I think we got fair trade value for Askarov today, being in the position that we were.
Okay, being in the position we were in, which is the position that Askarov put them in. But you heard it, DMase. It was a factor that Barry Trotz did not want to bring the circus into his training camp because they are trying to accomplish big things. And they did not want Askarov, as talented as he is, to take away from what the goal team is, because Askarov was about him. He was saying, put me in the NHL or I'm not going to the AHL.
It's funny. It's funny how people sort of forget, wasn't just, 7 months ago, probably a little less than that. Probably was like 5-6 months ago. When that whole Barry thing started up and he wanted to leave, he wanted to be traded.
Tyson
Barry and everybody, he's causing a distraction. Get rid of him. This and that and that and this. But on this one, they like, oh, don't worry about it. They just forget about the distraction. And I said this to you off air, Willie. Had they brought him up, because obviously the attitude is what sort of irking or not making this thing sort of quite sit right. It's the whole attitude and approach of how he went about his business. And hey, listen, you got what you wanted. You're on a new team now. You're going to be the starting goalie or the backup goalie, one of the two. They won't send you back down to Milwaukee because it would have been foolish of them to trade for you if they were going to send you back to Milwaukee, because you have already told everybody, I'm not going to Milwaukee. That's not what I'm doing. I'm not going to the AHL. Why isn't people saying, the same things they said about Barry? Why aren't they saying this about Askarov? Why? Because of the talent? I don't care how damn talented he is. If he's going to be a malcontent, if he's going to be if he's going to ruffle feathers, if he's going to mess up the chemistry in the locker room, why in the hell wouldn't I leave in Milwaukee to grow up, to mature? You always talk about somebody need to grow up and mature and don't need to cause friction in locker rooms, but y'all so quick to forget all of that about Askarov because of his talent. Well, his talent could potentially ruin that locker room. And Barry ultimately did what he felt was right. He did what he felt was right by the player. Okay, you want to go somewhere else? Now it's somebody else's headache. I hope the young man does well, but it's somebody else's headache. He did what was best for the player, but more importantly, he did what was best for the organization. Because if he felt that he could overlook some of the stuff that Askarov was doing, he would have kept him because it would have been best for the organization. But he didn't. He got his ass up out of here because that was best for the organization. So when you talk about, well, he should have kept him, why you, on one hand, you want to get rid of a person, his attitude, but on another hand, you want to keep a person because of their attitude, which their attitude isn't isn't good. It's you know what.
So let's talk about the asset management, because that's been part of our discussion for a long time. Knowing that you had Saros, you committed to Saros, what to do with Askarov, asset management. What did they get? David Enstrom, I think if you take a look at all of the scouting reports for him, and he's only 19. He is 6'3", which is hard to find as a center. He takes the faceoffs in all three zones. He has got the two-way. Now, a lot of people, as soon as you say he's a third line center, people go, oh man, I need the number one center. And that's true. I think that's what Barry Trotz hoped to do, is to trade Askarov for a potential number one center. Edstrom does not project as a number one center, but he has a lot of attributes, and I think he could be part of guys who are going to score 30 goals or be flashy, but they help you win in a lot of ways. I think Edstrom and Svechkov even have some of those attributes. So 3, 4, 5 years down the road, if Svechkov and Edstrom turn into some of those middle six guys, your second line center, your third line center, even a fourth line center, I think that's what you're looking at. So only time will tell. Then the other part of it is you have another first round pick that maybe
a
Vegas hits the wall.
First round pick.
They're going to get Vegas's first round pick.
Okay.
So what you have to hope for, it's just another reason to root against Vegas. Now, a lot of Vegas's depth got plucked last year. Chandler Stevenson, obviously Marchessault's coming to Nashville. They lost 3 or 4 other important role players. They don't have any salary cap wiggle room at all. They never do. But the depth is really getting plucked. I still think they're probably going to be pretty good, but if they get an injury rash again, I don't think they're very equipped to handle it. So I don't know where that pick is going to fall. But with 3 first-round picks, you could maneuver and maybe use some of that to eventually get the number one center, which is still the unicorn that they're chasing, right? That's still what they want.
That's a top 7 pick, is it? Top 5, top 7?
I don't know where. It depends on where. Right. A lot of times to get that kind of guy, unless you're getting lucky, right? And that guy falls a little bit in the draft. And again, these guys are 18 years old. Let me get to Adam real quick. Adam, what are your thoughts on this?
I think it's insane, Willie, like how good Barry Trotz is at this. He looks comfortable, and he's a great coach. I think he may be a better GM than he is coach. Like everything he does works, man. I can't believe you got 2 first-rounders, essentially 2 first-rounders for a disgruntled player, man. I don't care who he is. The fact that you were able to get that for somebody who publicly said I wanted to go out, and somebody who didn't even help us last year. We were a winning hockey team. We weren't losing. We were winning. We have nothing but positive buzz, 3 pieces of leadership. You know, all that just came in. This guy wasn't even going to play, and we got 2 first-rounders. Like, San Jose looks dumb. They look so dumb for making that trade.
Well, they won't look dumb if he hits it big down the road. The question is, between now and the time that most goalies are ready to take the reins, and so Askarov has got about 3 years until he gets into that age range, unless he's Andrei Vasilevsky. Now we'll see. If he's one of those guys, then so be it. But they've got a bad team with no defense that's in a full rebuild. The next couple of years are going to be pretty interesting to see what they do with Askarov. Will he play in the NHL the whole year this year? They've got 2 other NHL goalies. They're going to have to deal with that. Also, don't forget the Predators got a goalie in this trade too. Yeah. I think Magnus Krona down the road is a candidate to be a solid backup to UC Saros, which is really all you need. It's the UC Saros show for the next 4 or 5 years.
Yep.
That's what it is. All right, we're out of time. This will come back, I'm sure. We'll have a lot to talk about in Predators training camp when that gets cranked up. In the meantime, we're a day away from the Titans cuts, and Jared Stillman's chomping at the bit. He's got Stillman & Company coming up next.
Be love on your people. Have a wonderful and safe and blessed Monday. Peace.